Chapter 3683. After half a year of recuperation, Zhuowen finally recovered from all his internal injuries. He also planned to leave the open starry sky and head to the 100 domains. Outside the Hongmeng Path, Ryuka and a group of people came to send Zhuowen off. In addition, the Black King, Demon Sage Dong Huang Tai, Du Huaken, and some other familiar people from Sanqing Street also came outside the Hongmeng Path. They were all here to send Zhuowen off. Of course, only these people knew about Zhuo Wenli's plan to travel the starry sky. They were all his trusted friends. We don't know what kind of place the 100 domains is, but it's much more dangerous than traveling the starry sky. If you get there, you must remember to protect yourself. Long Xiaotian and Feng Xiao pulled Zhuowen and nagged at him. Both of their faces were filled with reluctance. Although they wanted Zhuowen to stay, they knew that it was unrealistic. Zhuowen had his own pursuits and path. They couldn't force him. "Father, I will definitely catch up to you. After I break through the heavens, I will step onto the Hongmeng Path to find you." Zhuojun and gave Zhuowen a hug and said with a firm gaze. Zhuowen patted Zhuojun and shoulder and said with a smile, "Jun, and I believe that with your talent, you will soon catch up to me." Zhuowen's gaze fell on Mu Chenxue. He didn't say anything, but revealed an apologetic expression. Although his great world could fit Mu Chenxue, Zhuojun, and the rest of his family, and bring them to the 100 domains. But he knew that this wasn't suitable at all. The laws of the 100 domains were too strong. No one in his family had broken through the heavens. Even if he brought them there, they would just stay in the great world. If he died in the 100 domains, the great world would be destroyed. At that time, his family would also be destroyed. This was simply not worth the loss. Zhuowen's current plan was to raise his cultivation as soon as possible and then establish a foundation of his own in the 100 domains. In the future, if any Ryuka or native cultivators managed to break through the heavens and enter the 100 domains, then he would accept them as a member of his force. This was the most appropriate method at the moment. Mu Chenxue stretched out her slender, jade-like hands and carefully tidied up Zhuowen's clothes. She instructed, "After reaching the 100 outer territories, you must be careful. Don't act recklessly. There's one more important thing that you must do. That is to think of me often. You understand?" Zhuowen's gaze was gentle as he held on to Mu Chenxue's hand and said affectionately, "My wife's words are like an imperial edict, and I dare not disobey." Mu Chenxue giggled. After that, the Black King, Dong Huang Tai, and the others also went up to bid farewell to Zhuowen. After exchanging some pleasantries, Zhuowen stepped onto the primordial path, waved at everyone, and rushed towards the primordial path. Not long after, Zhuowen's figure turned into a Xiaohei dot and disappeared from everyone's sight. "Uncle Demon Saint, my father said that only heaven-breaking realm cultivators have the qualifications to step onto the primordial path. If someone who hasn't broken through the heavens steps on it, they will be pressed down. Is this true?" Zhuojun and looked at Zhuowen's disappearing figure with great reluctance in his heart, but his gaze quickly landed on the primordial path, and he asked Demon Saint curiously, "This is true. When I went up, I almost died there. If it wasn't for Master Zhuo saving me, I would have already died." Demon Saint revealed a bitter smile. Thinking back to the scene when he stepped onto the primordial path, he still had some lingering fear. "Then my father's cultivation is only at the 5th heaven's blight. Why can he come and go freely on the primordial path? Why don't Uncle Demon Saint go up and give it a try? Who knows, you might be the same as my father." Zhuojun and said. Demon Saint shook his head like a rattle drum. What a joke. Zhuowen wasn't here this time. If he died there, no one could save him. "Your father is a freak, not what we can compare to. He can come and go freely on the primordial path, but we can't. Demon Saint admitted defeat. Everyone also nodded their heads in deep agreement, very much agreeing with Demon Saint's evaluation of Zhuowen. This guy was indeed a freak. Zhuowen rushed on the primordial path for a full few days. He soon discovered that the circling starry sky he was in had already become the size of a palm at this moment. At the same time, he also finally saw the full appearance of the primordial tree clearly. The primordial tree was an incomparably massive towering tree that grew in the chaotic starry sky. The entire primordial tree was suffused with a mysterious purple color, and on this big tree there were no leaves, only densely packed branches like a spider web. And on these branches hung one starry sky-colored fruit after another. Zhuowen knew that these fruits were actually each and every one of the lower realms' starry skies. And the circling starry sky that Zhuowen was in was one of these fruits. Apart from this, Zhuowen also discovered that among these starry sky fruits, there were quite a few purple long rainbows that gave rise to one after another. He was very clear that these purple long rainbows were actually the primordial path of each lower realm's starry sky. The place where these purple long rainbows finally converged was extremely far ahead on a seemingly very large continent. That continent's surface was enshrouded with all sorts of different energies. These energies were brightly colored, dazzling, and resplendent. Zhuowen knew that continent was actually his final destination this time, the 100 Outer Realms. He knew that the 100 Outer Realms looked like it was not far from him, but actually it was much further than he imagined. Bang, bang, bang. Suddenly, the sound of intense collision came from the place where Zhuowen was. His gaze landed on the place of collision and discovered that a single-eyed behemoth had appeared there since who knows when. This behemoth was at least 10,000 feet in size and exuded a terrifying aura that made one's hair stand on end. In particular, that single eye contained some sort of purplish gold color, and the energy contained within it was absolutely extraordinary. This single-eyed behemoth stared fixedly at Zhuowen. Zhuowen even saw that the single-eyed behemoth was actually drooling at him. Was it treating him as prey? Bang, bang, bang. The single-eyed behemoth continuously bombarded the primordial path, blasting out a series of dense energy ripples on the surface of the primordial path. There was some sort of powerful energy barrier several dozen feet around the primordial path. This energy barrier was formed by the energy of the primordial tree, and it could be said that it was the purest energy of the primordial tree. When Zhuowen first set foot on the primordial path, he had already discovered the energy barrier surrounding the primordial path. At first, he had thought that this energy barrier was superfluous, but now he knew that this energy barrier was really useful. The aura of this single-eyed behemoth that had suddenly appeared was very powerful, and it was at least a powerful being around the heaven-crushing third transformation. If this energy barrier had not resisted this single-eyed behemoth, Zhuowen would have been able to deal with it, but he would probably have been in a somewhat difficult situation. However, Zhuowen's expression quickly turned ugly. This was because the sounds of collisions around him had become even more violent. He looked up and discovered that even more single-eyed behemoths had appeared around him at some point. Chapter 3684. If Zhuowen were to face so many one-eyed behemoths alone, he would probably really be finished. Fortunately, the primordial chaos path's energy barrier was really sturdy. The continuous bombardment of hundreds of one-eyed beasts did not have any effect on the energy barrier. Zhuowen looked at the one-eyed beasts around him and fell into deep thought. It seemed that the chaotic starry sky was much more dangerous than he had imagined. He had only traveled along the primordial chaos path for a few days when he encountered these troublesome one-eyed beasts. Perhaps there were even more terrifying existences in the depths of the chaotic starry sky. Zhuowen pondered as he continued to rush toward the depths of the primordial chaos path. In the following period of time, he saw all kinds of terrifying beasts in the chaotic starry sky. He even saw some beasts with auras that were not inferior to supremacy, Hongrui. He knew that these beasts were at least heaven-crushing 8 transformations. However, Zhuowen's gaze became more and more solemn. He suddenly felt that his idea of relying on himself to reach the 100 domains was really too stupid. Unless he could reach the level of Duan Jipeng and Supremacy Hongrui, he might be able to reach the 100 domains from the primordial chaos tree without getting lost. However, with his current cultivation and strength, if he wanted to rely on traversing the starry sky to reach the 100 domains, it would probably be a fool's dream. He was also glad that the primordial chaos path appeared in the starry sky in advance. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. In the following period of time, Zhuowen basically buried himself in rushing. Occasionally, when he was tired, he would directly sit cross-legged on the primordial chaos path to meditate and cultivate. However, Zhuowen discovered that he could not come into contact with the chaotic energy in the chaotic starry sky at all in the primordial chaos path. And without chaotic energy, he could not cultivate at all. He could only rely on chaotic crystals and divine medicine to recover. This made Zhuowen very vexed. He knew that his plan to cultivate on the primordial chaos path was probably going to be ruined. After an unknown amount of time, Zhuowen discovered that the 100 domains of the outer realm seemed to have begun to expand. Zhuowen's eyes lit up. He knew that he should have already started to approach the 100 domains now. It probably wouldn't be long before he could reach the 100 outer realms. Another few months passed, and the vast territory of the 100 outer realms appeared before his eyes. The 100 outer realms were simply too large. They spanned across the primal chaos of the starry sky, like a giant primordial beast that could be seen but not touched. After Zhuowen clearly saw the 100 outer realms, he felt his own insignificance. The 100 territories in the outer realm was simply too big. Even though it might not be as big as the primordial Hong tree, it was still 1/5 of the primordial Hong tree's size. We're about to reach the 100 outer realms. Zhuowen's eyes lit up, and he sped up a lot. He was like the wind as he charged toward the 100 outer territories. Boom! Suddenly, a terrifying explosion resounded in the distance. The sound was so loud that when it reached Zhuowen's ears, it echoed in Zhuowen's ears. It was like a demonic sound that constantly ravaged his eardrums. It even affected his divine soul. Zhuowen's expression changed slightly, and he couldn't help but look toward the source of the sound. He was shocked to see that, in the distance, a monster that was hundreds of thousands of feet tall was constantly bombarding the primordial chaos paths that connected to the 100 outer realms. This monster's appearance was very similar to an octopus. It had countless black tentacles, but at the core of these tentacles was actually an incomparably huge minotaur. What terrified Zhuowen even more was that this monster's tentacles were casually bombarding the nearby primordial chaos paths. They couldn't even withstand a single blow, and were blasted into smithereens. How is this possible? Zhuowen's pupils shrank to the size of needles. Along the way, Zhuowen had encountered too many giant beasts outside the primordial chaos paths. There were even heaven-crushing 8 transformations beasts. However, these giant beasts couldn't penetrate the primordial chaos path's defenses at all. However, this terrifying giant beast that suddenly appeared easily destroyed the primordial chaos paths with a casual blow. Moreover, Zhuowen also discovered that there were actually some cultivators passing through the primordial chaos paths that were being bombarded. Obviously, most of these cultivators had just broken through the heavens and were planning to use the primordial chaos paths to head to the 100 Outer Realms. Unfortunately, the primordial chaos paths were destroyed. They didn't even have the chance to escape before they were swept away by the tentacles. Then they were thrown into the Minotaur's mouth and eaten directly. What shocked Zhuowen even more was that the Minotaur was heading towards him. Along the way, the primordial chaos paths were destroyed, and none of the cultivators inside survived. Damn it! What kind of monster is this? Zhuowen's expression changed drastically. Without thinking, he immediately used his movement technique and quickly fled towards the 100 Outer Realms. He had to enter the 100 Outer Realms before this Minotaur reached his primordial chaos path. Otherwise, his fate wouldn't be much better than the other cultivators on the primordial chaos path. In his opinion, this monster could easily destroy the primordial chaos paths. It was probably the existence of the great carefree realm that Duan Jipeng mentioned. In the eyes of this kind of existence, he was an ant-like existence. He didn't want to face this Minotaur head-on. The 100 Outer Realms is close at hand. I only need 10 breaths of time to reach the entrance. As Zhuowen was running quickly, he discovered that a door had appeared at the end of the primordial chaos path. He knew that it should be the end of the primordial chaos path, and also one of the entrances to the 100 Outer Realms. Zhuowen was wild with joy. His feet moved even faster. His hands held the chaos crystal and rapidly absorbed the chaos energy to replenish the rapidly depleted energy in his body. Just as Zhuowen was about to reach the entrance, a tentacle instantly fell on the end of the primordial chaos path. Crack, crack, crack. The energy shield on the surface of the primordial chaos path was covered with dense cracks. In the end, it exploded with a loud bang. At this moment, Zhuowen reacted extremely quickly. With a stomp of his right foot, his body immediately retreated backward. At the same time, he released dozens of soul sword essences. They flew across the sky and blasted the black tentacle that had appeared in front of him. Bang, bang, bang. The soul sword essences only managed to stop the black tentacle for less than a breath of time before they were shattered by the tentacle with a loud bang. Zhuowen, on the other hand, simply fled in another direction. His eyes revealed a look of unwillingness. He was clearly just a little bit away from escaping into the 100 Outer Realms, but he was still a step slower than the monster. The moment Zhuowen fled, he saw with his own eyes that the primordial chaos path he was in was completely shattered. Then the black tentacle caught up to Zhuo when at an extremely fast speed. Zhuowen was helpless. He could only take out the half-moon divine fire spear and hold it in front of him, hoping to block the attack. The only thing that made him happy was that the monster didn't come here personally. It only sent a tentacle. Obviously, the monster saw that Zhuowen was about to escape into the 100 Outer Realms, so it immediately mobilized its tentacle to deal with Zhuowen first. Bang, bang, bang. The black tentacle instantly lashed out at Zhuowen dozens of times. Zhuowen groaned and spat out a mouthful of blood. Because his body couldn't withstand the terrifying aura, it began to crack. As for the half-moon divine fire spear, it was much dimmer and no longer had its divine might. Chapter 3685. When this black tentacle was about to land on Zhuowen's body, it actually exploded. Black blood splattered and stained Zhuowen's entire body. This black blood was extremely corrosive. The instant Zhuowen came into contact with this black blood, Zhuowen could no longer bear it and screamed in agony. With Zhuowen's cultivation, normal corrosive properties could not harm him at all. However, this black tentacle monster was at a much higher level than him. Its corrosive properties were too terrifying. Not only did it corrode his physical body, but it was also constantly eating away at his divine sense. Zhuowen endured the intense pain and looked in the direction of the giant minotaur monster. He saw that the giant monster was currently blocked by a figure. From afar, this figure looked like the figure of an ordinary middle-aged man. He held a divine sword that was about 10 feet long. Endless, terrifying sword intent surged from this person's body. His aura was not weaker than that of the giant monster. Most of the monster's tentacles had all exploded at this moment. This person had probably just appeared and attacked the monster with his sword. That was why most of the monster's tentacles were cut off. As for the tentacle that had attacked Zhuowen, it had suddenly exploded because it had been affected by this person's sword. The giant monster roared angrily and pounced toward that figure. Thus, one man and one beast engaged in a fierce battle in the chaotic starry sky. Terrifying ripples from the battle were like ring-shaped waves that constantly spread out in all directions. Zhuowen's consciousness became more and more blurry. His physical body was continuously corroded. Right now, he could barely withstand it. However, his divine sense was also affected. Although his divine sense was powerful, it was not to the extent of being annihilated by this corrosion. However, it had a great impact on his divine sense, causing his consciousness to begin to fall into chaos. At the same time, Zhuowen discovered that not far away, some giant beasts had already discovered him and were approaching him. They were treating him as prey. I have to hurry and enter the 100 domains. Zhuowen endured the splitting headache and forced himself to stay alert. He quickly rushed toward the entrance, not far away. However, he was still too slow. A giant beast that looked like a leopard was extremely fast and blocked his path. This leopard's aura wasn't particularly powerful, and it was only around the heaven-crushing transformation stage. If Zhuowen was at his peak, he would have killed him with a single strike. But now, his condition was too bad. His mind was starting to go haywire, and his strength had dropped considerably. Scram! Zhuowen realized that more and more giant beasts had gathered behind him, and they were all eyeing him covetously, intending to ambush him. He knew that he could not delay any longer. Ignoring the extremely poor state of his spirit, he once again unleashed a spirit sword intent and slashed at the leopard. Bang, bang, bang. The terrifying green lotus explosion burst out, accompanied by the terrifying sword will, and the leopard was directly torn to pieces. Zhuowen also spat out a mouthful of blood, and his face was pale. He braced himself and quickly rushed into the entrance of the 100 outer territories. The moment he entered the entrance, he could clearly feel the world spinning. He was very familiar with this feeling. It was the feeling of being teleported. It was just that his mental state was too exhausted, and his divine soul was also exhausted to the point of being in a deficit. He had already fainted during the process of transmission. In the tranquil valley, purple flowers bloomed everywhere. At the end of the valley, there was a small waterfall. Two figures walked over from the entrance of the valley. These two figures were respectively one old and one young. The old man carried a bamboo basket and walked slowly. In front of the old man was a young girl in the prime of her youth. "Grandpa, there really are purple god flowers in this valley, and there are so many of them. In the future, we don't have to wade through mountains and rivers to go to Violet Mountain. We can just come directly to this valley." The young girl skipped into the valley. When she saw the large expanse of purple flowers in the valley, her beautiful eyes revealed little stars, and she cheerfully walked into the sea of flowers. It's indeed a great harvest. I didn't expect that the valley I accidentally discovered would actually have so many purple god flowers growing. The old man was also full of smiles. Miaozhen, stop playing. Pick the purple god flowers first. However, don't pick too many. We can't drain the pond to catch all the fish. In the future, We still need to come here often to pick them." The old man said to the young girl. When he discovered that the young girl did not reply, he could not help but look in her direction in puzzlement. At this moment, the young girl was standing at the front of the valley at the small waterfall. She was in a daze, and no one knew what she was looking at. The old man called out to the young girl a few more times, but he discovered that the young girl was indifferent. The old man was surprised. He could not help but stand up and walk to the young girl's side. He wanted to say something, but when he followed the young girl's line of sight, he could not help but be stunned. He saw that on the shore below the waterfall, there was a man lying down. What made the old man frown even more was that this man's condition was too miserable. This was because this man had been corroded from head to toe by some kind of corrosive energy. His flesh and blood were all purple and black in color. 1/3 of this man's flesh and blood had been completely corroded, revealing eerie white bones. His face was also a mess, and it was impossible to recognize his original appearance. "Miaozhen, this man is already dead." The old man carefully observed the corpse that was beyond recognition. He pulled Miaozhen and did not plan to care about this man. The old man's thinking was very simple. It was better to avoid unnecessary trouble. This man's injuries were so serious, and he could see that there was still some residual corrosive energy in his wounds. Even he was shocked. He knew that this man was definitely not an ordinary person. In other words, the person who hunted him was definitely not an ordinary person. "Grandpa, he is clearly still alive. Why do you say that he is dead?" Miaozhen broke free from the old man's hand and said with a frown, "I said that he is dead, so he is dead. Your grandpa has been a doctor for his whole life. How can I not see this?" The old man stepped forward again and wanted to pull Miaozhen away, but Miaozhen dodged. Miaozhen hurriedly ran to the corpse. She did not mind that the corpse was dirty. She stretched out her jade-like hand and touched the man's neck. She said, "Grandpa, I was right. He still has a pulse. He is still alive. You must have seen wrongly just now." The old man sighed softly and pulled out a piercingly cold dagger from his waist. He said, "Since he is not dead, I will kill him now." Miaozhen screamed and quickly blocked in front of the old man. Her beautiful eyes were filled with fear. She said, "Grandpa, what are you doing? Why do you want to kill him?" The old man pointed at the surface of the corpse that was beyond recognition. He said, "There is residual corrosive energy in the wounds on this man's body. It is absolutely not something that can be left behind by an ordinary heaven-breaking tier elite. In other words, this man should have been hunted down by a very powerful elite and finally landed here with heavy injuries. The implications are really too great. We cannot bear the responsibility at all. If by any chance we save him and are then found by the faction behind this person, we will really be finished." Miaozhen was stunned. She did not expect that the old man would actually think so much. "Grandpa, didn't you always say that a doctor has a benevolent heart? You have been a doctor for your whole life. Haven't you always followed this principle? Why are you going against your own principle at this time?" Chapter 3686. The old man walked forward and lifted up the corpse that was beyond recognition. Then he said to the young girl, "Let's place him in a hidden place in this valley first. I'll treat his wounds slowly later." "Grandpa, aren't we bringing him back?" the young girl asked in surprise. "Can't bring him back. This person's origin is unknown. We'd better be more cautious. If there's really a formidable person chasing after him, this way he won't implicate us, and we can save him," the old man said. Although the young girl was still worried, she had no choice but to accept the old man's suggestion. Very soon, the two people found a hidden cave in a remote part of the valley. They made a simple arrangement in the cave and placed this man, who was beyond recognition here. After that, the old man took out bottles and jars from his body. Opening the bottle corks, he smeared the various liquids inside on the wounds on the man's body. What was strange was that after these medicinal liquids were smeared on the wounds that were deteriorating continuously stopped deteriorating. But the old man's expression became more and more solemn. These healing medicines of his were the most famous in this area. It was also his ancestral secret recipe. No matter how serious the external injuries were, as long as this healing medicine was smeared, it could basically recover rapidly. But this person's wounds merely stopped deteriorating. There was no trace of recovery at all. It could be seen that this person's external injuries were absolutely not ordinary. Grandpa, did your medicine lose its effectiveness? Why is it not working at all? The young girl opened her eyes wide and looked for a long time, but did not see that the man's wounds improved. She asked in surprise. The old man staggered and almost fell. What do you mean my medicine lost its effectiveness? It's clearly this person's injuries that are not ordinary. Cough, cough. Miaozhen, this person's injuries are too serious. Furthermore, it's not an ordinary person's injuries. To want to completely recover his injuries, I'm afraid it will take a lot of time. Let's go back first today. Tomorrow, I'll bring some more medicine to apply on him. The old man said. Miaozhen nodded. She also knew that her grandfather used the best medicine on this person, and it only stopped his injuries from deteriorating. It could be seen that to want to completely recover this person's injuries, it would probably take a very long time. Grandpa, wait a moment. I'll set up my array disc at the cave entrance. This way, it can also protect his life. Miaozhen took out an array disc from her bosom and set it at the cave entrance. Suddenly, a strong array formation fluctuation appeared at the cave entrance. The old man felt that it was not worth it to waste an array disc on this person. However, looking at Miaozhen's expression, he did not say anything. His granddaughter was too kind-hearted. How could she survive in this cold world where only the strong were respected with such a personality? The old man began to worry. In the future, if he was really gone, who would Miaozhen rely on? Her personality was really not suitable for this world. Fortunately, Miaozhen's Dao root isn't bad. Once the matters here are over, I can send her to the Ascension sect to cultivate. As long as she performs well, she should be able to survive in this cruel world in the future with the Ascension sect as her backing. The old man was filled with thoughts. Grandpa, I'm done, let's go. After Miaozhen finished setting up the array, she clapped her hands and called out to the old man. After that, the old man and the young man left the valley. Night slowly descended, and the entire valley was plunged into darkness. Inside the cave, the man whose face was completely unrecognizable slowly opened his eyes. I didn't die. The young man's eyes were filled with joy. He wanted to get up, but he soon discovered that his entire body was in a tearing pain. This young man was actually Zhuowen. When the black tentacle exploded, the blood that splashed out was so corrosive that it almost corroded Zhuowen's flesh beyond recognition. Especially when Zhuowen saw the terrifying injuries on his body, he couldn't help but gasp. I smell medicine on my body. Did someone apply some kind of healing medicine on me? Zhuowen soon discovered that the wounds on his body had a strong smell of medicine, and it was this medicine that was preventing the continuous corrosion of his wounds from worsening. It seemed that someone had saved him. As for the injuries to his spirit, Zhuowen wasn't worried. His spirit was really too miraculous. After being corroded to a certain extent by that power, it actually directly swallowed that power. And after swallowing that power, Zhuowen discovered that his spirit had grown a little stronger. Now, he was mainly worried about the injuries on his body. Zhuowen smiled bitterly. He finally knew how terrifying a great carefree realm powerhouse was. Just their blood alone, he couldn't bear it. The gap was really too great. And he also finally understood how dangerous the chaotic starry skies were. There were actually so many terrifying giant beasts. No wonder it was extremely dangerous for heaven-breaking realm powerhouses to cross the chaotic starry skies. If they were unlucky and encountered a great carefree realm giant beast, they would really be finished. Zhuowen guessed that when Venerable Hong, Rui, and Duan Jipeng crossed from the 100 domains outside the realm to the primordial Hongmeng tree, they should have grasped some kind of method to avoid giant beasts, so they could safely reach the primordial Hongmeng tree. I have to recover from my injuries as soon as possible. Zhuowen's gaze was solemn. Previously, he had been in a coma, so he couldn't take the initiative to heal his injuries. But now he was awake, so he naturally had to recover his injuries as much as possible. Thus, Zhuowen opened the great world and took out many healing divine pills, as well as heaven-breaking divine medicines that he had obtained while wandering the starry skies. Although heaven-breaking divine medicines were very precious, how could they be compared to his life? His injuries were too serious now, and he didn't have the strength to protect himself at all. Now, the most important task was to recover from his injuries. Zhuowen's recovery ability was indeed stronger than ordinary cultivators, and he also found that this world was filled with terrifying rich energy. This was chaotic energy purer than the chaotic starry skies, and it was a high-level energy that could be directly absorbed into the body. With the help of this energy, divine pills, and divine medicines, Zhuowen's injuries were rapidly recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. Zhuowen suspected that if he wasn't injured relying on the energy here, he would probably be able to cultivate to the peak of the 5th blight overnight. Woo woo woo. Just as Zhuowen was healing, a strange sound came from outside the cave. It was sometimes far and sometimes close, like the wail of a malicious spirit in the night. This sound attracted Zhuowen's attention, and he looked outside the cave. What shocked Zhuowen was that it was pitch black outside. With his eyesight, he couldn't see what was outside. It was completely dark. In the cave, the only light came from the disc array that was placed not far from him. The range of the light source of the disc array wasn't large, and it just happened to cover Zhuowen's body in the light source. However, when Zhuowen used his divine sense to investigate the area, his heart sank. His divine sense had only stopped at the area of light. As for the surrounding darkness, his divine sense was completely repelled. It was as if there was a huge force in the darkness that prevented his divine sense from exploring. Chapter 3687. Zhuowen's gaze became more and more solemn. The surrounding darkness was really too strange. Even with his divine sense, he couldn't penetrate the darkness to see what was inside. Kakik. Suddenly, Zhuowen heard a soft chuckle from the darkness beside him. The laughter was very sharp and full of strangeness, making one's hair stand on end. Zhuowen frowned slightly, and his face was very gloomy. His injuries were too serious now, and it was difficult for him to move. If this unknown thing attacked him now, he would probably be finished immediately. However, what made Zhuowen feel relieved was that although the thing in the darkness was very close to him, and he could even feel that it was moving not far from him, it didn't attack him. However, that thing did not attack him. Instead, it seemed to be afraid of something. Zhuowen looked at the disc array next to him. The disc array was emitting a weak light, and the place where he was lying happened to be within the range of the light source. Could it be that the thing in the darkness can't see the light, so it doesn't dare to attack me when I'm within the range of the light? Zhuowen thought to himself. Thinking of this, Zhuowen moved closer to the disc array. He immediately heard the screams in the darkness become somewhat anxious. As expected, Zhuowen's eyes lit up. After he moved closer to the disc array, he lay there peacefully. Although his ears were still filled with the ear-piercing screams, he didn't feel much. At the same time, Zhuowen also looked at the disc array with some confusion. He could see that the large array constructed by the disc array was only half a step into the heaven breaker level. In Zhuowen's opinion, this large array was really a little shabby. Moreover, the disc array itself was very ordinary, but the weak light emitted from the disc array's surface was very magical. It could actually dispel the strange thing in the darkness. I wonder if the disc array on my body can also emit this kind of light. In order to confirm his guess, Zhuowen slowly took out the disc array from the great world and then threw it into the darkness deep in the cave. Bang! 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 All of a sudden, intense ripping sounds came from the darkness. Zhuowen discovered that the imprint he had placed on the array disc had been torn apart. In other words, his disc array was torn apart in that instant. However, the light source that he was looking forward to was nowhere to be seen. Zhuowen's gaze turned serious. He knew that the array disc on him did not have such a function. In other words, the disc array that his savior gave him should be made of some special material, which was why it emitted such a magical light. At the same time, Zhuowen was also curious about the things in the darkness. What exactly was there in that pitch-black darkness? Although there were many doubts in his heart, Zhuowen knew that his most important task now was to quickly recover from his injuries. Thus, Zhuowen forced himself to sit up cross-legged. After cultivating the primordial chant, Zhuowen's physique became even stronger, so his recovery ability was also extremely strong. In addition, this place was the 100 territories outside the realm. The energy that existed here was extremely surging. Furthermore, the level was extremely high. Therefore, Zhuowen's injuries recovered rather quickly. During the process of Zhuowen healing, the sounds in the darkness became more and more concentrated and louder and louder. But Zhuowen did not pay attention to these. He concentrated on healing his injuries. When dawn broke and the first ray of light fell, Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes. The injuries on his body had already begun to scab, although it looked like his entire body was covered in scars, and his face was also scabbed, looking very hideous. But Zhuowen knew that after his injuries were completely healed, these scars would gradually disappear. Zhuowen leaped up and stretched his body. Instantly, the sound of bones colliding with each other could be heard from his body. The primordial chant is really miraculous. Circulating this cultivation method last night actually greatly accelerated the speed of healing my injuries. Right now, my injuries are probably already 80% recovered. Zhuowen's eyes lit up, unable to contain the excitement in his heart. When he stepped onto the primordial chant, he already knew that the 100 territories outside the realm was very dangerous. He had just entered the 100 territories outside the realm and suffered such serious injuries. He originally thought that he was finished this time, but he did not expect that he was rescued from death's door. Speaking of which, he had to properly thank that benefactor who saved his life. At the same time, he discovered that those strange cries around him had already disappeared at some point, and the dark cave also gradually started to brighten when the first ray of sunlight shone into the ground. Zhuowen looked into the depths of the cave and discovered that under the light of dawn, the inside of the cave was extremely quiet. At the same time, he did not see anything inside the cave. Zhuowen frowned. His gaze flickered. Those hideous sounds he heard last night, he was sure that it was not a dream. Inside this cave, or even outside the cave, there was definitely something that existed. It was just that the night here was seriously too strange. His eyes and divine sense were unable to see that thing in the darkness at all. Zhuowen decided to enter the cave to take a look. After Zhuowen went deep into the cave, he discovered that this cave was completely empty. Nothing existed, and the grand array set up by the array disk at the entrance of the cave had not been touched and was in perfect condition. Zhuowen's brows furrowed slightly. He repeatedly searched several times, but he did not discover any sort of mechanism or the like inside the cave. He returned to the array disk once more and silently pondered, but he could not figure it out no matter how hard he racked his brains. Last night, the grand array was not damaged, indicating that nothing barged in, and he did not find anything inside the cave. This made Zhuowen puzzled. Could it be that those hair-raising sounds he heard last night were all illusions? No, Zhuowen's divine soul was already heaven-breaking 3 transformations. Furthermore, it fused with the primordial grand mist stone and had long become extraordinary. If it was an illusion, he could perceive it. But those sounds last night were too real. They were absolutely not illusions. Since it was not an illusion and there was nothing else inside the cave, then what in the world was the situation last night? Zhuowen's brows furrowed slightly, unable to figure it out after racking his brains. You're awake. Suddenly, a clear voice came from the cave entrance. Zhuowen looked towards the cave entrance and found a young girl looking at him in surprise. Beside the young girl, there was an old man. However, the old man looked at Zhuowen with a face full of vigilance. He saw the young girl forming a seal with both hands at the entrance of the cave. Zhuowen saw the array disk at the entrance of the cave flicker with light, and then the grand array at the entrance of the cave was automatically unlocked. Zhuowen became more and more certain that the people who saved him should be the old man and the young girl in front of him. I'm Zhuowen. Thank you for saving my life. Zhuowen hurriedly stepped forward and cupped his hands politely. He was very clear that if it were not for the medicine that was applied on his body, he might still be unconscious. At that time, it would be hard to say whether he could wake up or not. Chapter 3688. Your injuries actually healed so quickly? Rather, it was the old man behind the young girl who sized up Zhuowen in surprise, revealing a look of surprise. Zhuowen smiled slightly. For him to be able to recover so quickly, it was actually really all thanks to the primordial mantra's miraculousness. Furthermore, Zhuowen was looking forward to how powerful the primordial mantra was more and more. Thinking up to here, Zhuowen could not wait to cultivate and break through to the heaven-breaking realm. After all, the primordial mantra's lowest threshold was the heaven-breaking realm. He was currently unable to cultivate it, yet. Seeing that Zhuowen did not plan on answering, the old man was somewhat displeased, but did not continue asking either. Fellow Taoist, since your injuries are already healed, then you can leave this place, the old man said indifferently. Zhuowen was stunned, puzzled in his heart. This old man's attitude towards him was somewhat off. Could it be that he offended this old man in some way? May I ask, which realm in the 100 Outer Realms is this place? It's my first time here, and I'm completely unfamiliar with the 100 Outer Realms. Zhuowen said awkwardly. Although he had the map of the 100 Outer Realms on him, it was only a rough map. As for the detailed map of the 100 Outer Realms, he did not have it. Furthermore, he was unfamiliar with this place and really did not know where to go. First time here? Weren't you a cultivator of the 100 Outer Realms before? The old man asked in surprise. Zhuowen was stunned and said in surprise, Yeah, I just came from the primordial Tao. I'm really not familiar with this place at all. Senior, please give me pointers. As Zhuowen said, his expression was somewhat puzzled, because he discovered that the aura of the old man in front of him was very weak, not even corroborating his Tao. Rather, it was the young girl beside the old man whose aura was much more vigorous than the old man's. She should already be around 3rd blight cultivation, Since you came from the lower realms' starry skies, why would you suffer such severe injuries? According to what this old man knows, the injuries on your body were absolutely caused by a heaven-breaking realm powerhouse. Furthermore, your cultivation has yet to break through heaven. Lower realms' starry skies wanting to enter the primordial Tao, you have to be at least heaven-breaking realm. The old man's expression became even more vigilant, and he even began to pull the young girl back slowly. Zhuowen didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He somewhat understood the old man's thoughts. Whether it was the old man or the young girl, their cultivation levels were too low. After knowing that his injuries might have been caused by a heaven-breaking realm elite, they might have thought that he was being hunted down by a heaven-breaking realm elite. The old man didn't want to have too much to do with him in case he got into trouble. Zhuowen could understand the old man's thoughts. When he was traveling through the stars, he already knew that there were a large number of mortals in the 100 outer domains. These mortals didn't have Tao roots, so they couldn't cross the Tao affirmation process. Their cultivation levels could only reach the virtual sky world at most. This old man should be a mortal from the 100 outer regions. The young girl's aptitude was not bad, reaching the third blight of half a step into the heaven-breaking realm. Elder, I'm not lying at all. However, I still have to thank the two of you for your help. Otherwise, this Shua's life would have been in danger. With that said, Zhuowen took out a small jade bottle from his great world and handed it to the girl. This is the Rebirth Good Fortune pill. It's very beneficial to this girl's cultivation. Take it as this Shua thanking the two of you for saving my life. The Rebirth Good Fortune pill was a kind of half-step heaven-breaking divine pill that Zhuowen created when he was traveling through the stars. This divine pill was very miraculous. It was very useful for cultivators half a step into the heaven-breaking realm. Even fifth blight cultivators could increase their cultivation speed. The old man took the jade bottle. After opening the bottle cap, he instantly felt an unconcealable strong medicinal power. Half-step heaven-breaking divine pill. Although the old man wasn't an alchemist, he was a doctor with great medical skills. He could tell at a glance that this Rebirth Good Fortune pill was a half-step heaven-breaking divine pill. Moreover, it wasn't an ordinary half-step heaven-breaking divine pill. The old man's expression eased a lot. He pointed to the east of the valley and said, "Keep going east. You'll reach a tribe in about half a day. If you're really new here, you can learn about it in that tribe. Also, these are realm stones, the common currency of the 100 regions outside the realm. Take them first." Saying so, the old man threw 10 thumb-sized crystals to Zhuowen. He didn't have the slightest intention of continuing to travel with Zhuowen. Zhuowen smiled bitterly. He knew that the old man still didn't believe him. Moreover, he also discovered that the realm stones that the old man gave him actually had very weak chaotic energy. The color of realm stones was very similar to chaos crystals, but they were much smaller in size. Moreover, the amount of chaotic energy inside was also pitifully small. Zhuowen guessed that these realm stones should have been refined from the waste materials inside chaos crystal mines. Apart from being used for transactions, the weak chaotic energy inside could not be absorbed at all. Zhuowen cupped his fists and asked seriously, "Elder, before leaving, can I ask one more question?" Because of the Rebirth Good Fortune pill, the old man's attitude toward Zhuowen was much better, and he nodded at Zhuowen. "Last night, when I woke up, why was my divine sense unable to enter the night? Moreover, I discovered that there seemed to be some kind of existence in the night, emitting strange cries. But when dawn just broke that day, I searched inside the cave and didn't discover anything. Even the great formation at the cave entrance was completely intact." Zhuowen slowly recounted the strange things that happened last night. "You don't even know this." The old man started to believe a little that Zhuowen really came from the lower realms' starry skies. If he was a living being from the 100 regions outside the realm, he definitely wouldn't ask such a common question. There are many strange powers in the night of the 100 regions outside the realm. Once night arrives, many evil spirits will appear in the darkness. These evil spirits don't have physical bodies, but can possess bodies, suck blood essence, and other terrifying abilities. Once we mortals are in the night, without a light source, we'll undoubtedly die. There are even some evil spirits whose strength is extremely powerful, possessing the ability to kill Shattering Heaven tier elites. Therefore, when night falls, even those Shattering Heaven tier lords won't casually go out. When the old man mentioned the so-called evil spirits, his eyes revealed extreme fear. And Miao Shen even revealed a look of fear. Obviously, the two of them were very afraid of the evil spirits mentioned by the old man. Evil spirits? Zhuowen's brows furrowed slightly. He didn't expect that the night of the 100 regions outside the realm would actually be so dangerous, and that the so-called evil spirits would actually appear. It seemed that the thing that appeared beside him last night should be the evil spirits that the old man spoke of. If it wasn't for the formation disk bringing him light, he would probably have been killed by that evil spirit. Big Brother Zhua, I'm called Miao Shen. You'd better be careful of things at night when you're outside. My formation disk has a light source. Take it. If you get lost, you won't be targeted by the evil spirits. Miao Shen handed the formation disk to Zhuowen. Her beautiful eyes filled with an apologetic look. Although she really wanted to help Zhuowen, her grandfather had already told her beforehand that after saving Zhuowen, she was not allowed to have anything to do with him. Therefore, the only thing she could do now was to hand the formation disk to Zhuowen. Thank you, Miss Miao Shen. Zhuowen put away the formation disk, cupped his fists at the two people, and left the valley. Grandfather, I think he really just came to the 100 regions outside the realm. Did you misunderstand him? Miao Shen said somewhat reproachfully. The old man shook his head and said, Miao Shen, you may know a person for a long time without understanding his heart. When you're outside, be more careful. This person's origins are unknown. Just based on his words alone, we can't fully believe it. Chapter 3689. Zhuowen followed the old man's instructions and walked towards the east. Half a day later, he indeed saw a small tribe. This tribe wasn't big indeed. It only had a population of about 30 households. What caught Zhuowen's attention the most was a damaged stone statue standing in the middle of the tribe. If it was an ordinary stone statue, Zhuowen wouldn't have noticed it. However, this stone statue emitted the same light source as the formation disk in Zhuowen's hand. Moreover, the range of this light source was very large. It just happened to cover the entire tribe. Zhuowen revealed a contemplative expression. He knew the light source of this stone statue should be to protect this tribe from evil spirits at night. Zhuowen also discovered that the people living in this tribe were basically mortals. Even the hunters, who were the backbone of the tribe, were only in the virtual sky world. Outsider, our tribe isn't a place for you to stay. Quickly scram. A tall and sturdy man blocked Zhuowen at the door. At the same time, everyone in the tribe looked at Zhuowen vigilantly. The women and children entered the house and coldly looked at Zhuowen through the cracks in the windows. Zhuowen was a bit speechless. He didn't expect this tribe to actually not welcome outsiders. After Zhuowen secretly cursed the old man, he took out the old man's realm stone and handed it to the man. He said with a smile, Fellow Taoist, I only need to stay here for one night. I'll leave tomorrow. The man didn't even look at the realm stone Zhuowen gave him. He said with a cold gaze, Outsider, I already said our tribe doesn't welcome you. Zhuowen frowned slightly. He didn't expect this man's attitude to be so strong. In a few hours, the sky would darken. If he slept in the wild, it would be too dangerous. The formation disk Miaozhen gave him had a light source. However, Miaozhen reminded him that the light source of this formation disk was too weak. If he encountered a powerful evil spirit at night, this light source might not be able to block it. His injuries hadn't completely healed yet. If he encountered a powerful evil spirit, he really wouldn't be able to handle it. This was also why he didn't want to sleep in the wild. Just as the two of them were in a deadlock, hurried footsteps could be heard coming from the depths of the forest behind them. 5 people quickly walked out of the forest. These 5 people were all wearing animal skins. Judging from the style, they should be from this tribe. These 5 people were carrying a young man. However, this young man's face was dark and swollen. It seemed that he had been deeply poisoned. 7 Lives venomous python's poison? Why would you provoke the 7 Lives venomous python? The tall man looked at the poisoned young man with a gloomy face, but his expression was one of bewilderment. This poisoned young man was his younger brother. His heart was already in a mess. However, he knew that the 7 Lives venomous python's poison was too terrifying, and their tribe's pharmacist had already left. No one could cure this poison. He could only watch as his brother died in front of him. "Captain, it's our fault." In order to chase after the rainbow rabbit, Yuan Kong ran too fast. We couldn't catch up at all. But when we caught up, he was already bitten by the 7 Lives venomous python. "Captain, if you want to punish someone, can you punish me alone? This time, it's all my fault." A slightly plump young man stood out and said with a gloomy expression. The tall man silently took a look at Yuan Kong, who was lying on the ground, already at his last gasp, and said with a long sigh, "You all go back to the tribe first. I'll handle Yuan Kang's matter." The 5 young men looked at each other. They knew that when the tall man said so, he actually did not intend to blame them. However, they could not feel happy no matter what. Yuan Kong was their companion and also the captain's younger brother. Now that Yuan Kong died together with them, their hearts were filled with guilt. "Your brother's poison, I can cure it." All of a sudden, a faint voice came over, attracting the attention of these 5 young men. They saw Zhuowen, who was standing at the tribe's entrance. However, Zhuowen's face was covered with scabs all over, looking very hideous. This made the 5 people frown subconsciously. The tall man suddenly turned around and stared straight at Zhuowen as he said, "Is this true?" Zhuowen nodded. He came to Yuan Kang's side, squatted down, and checked Yuan Kang's pulse. He found that Yuan Kang's pulse was already very weak. Yuan Kang's condition was extremely poor. He was already breathing more than he was exhaling. Moreover, Zhuowen also found that the 7 Lives venomous python's poison had already spread to Yuan Kang's heart. However, this was not a problem for Zhuowen. After all, he was a first-rank heaven-breaking alchemist, and Yuan Kang was only a mortal who had not even reached the virtual sky world. He took out a heaven-reaching detoxification pill and fed it to Yuan Kang. Soon, the swelling on Yuan Kang's face began to gradually recede, and his complexion became slightly better. Even his pulse had become strong and vigorous again. "Wow, Captain, Yuan Kang's complexion is much better. This person really has a way to cure the 7 Lives venomous python's poison." The 5 youths surrounded Yuan Kang once again, and the way they looked at Zhuowen instantly changed. The tall man's eyes also lit up. He looked at Zhuowen gratefully and carried Yuan Kang on his back. "Brother, follow me into the tribe." The tall man smiled kindly at Zhuowen. Although he did not recognize the grade of the detoxification pill Zhuowen gave him, this medicinal pill was definitely very valuable since it could cure the 7 Lives venomous python's poison. This person was so generous to give him a detoxification pill, so it was a great favor to him. The 5 young men surrounded Zhuowen, and their eyes were filled with respect and gratitude. Yuan Kong was their most important comrade. They had gone through fire and water many times, and they were as close as brothers. Now that Zhuowen saved Yuan Kang's life, in their hearts, it was equivalent to saving them once. Therefore, they were in awe of Zhuowen. During the process of entering the tribe, Zhuowen chatted with the tall man for a long time. Only then did he know that this tall man was called Yuanda, Yuan Kang's older brother. The tribe they were in was called the Yuan tribe. This name was given because all the people in the tribe had the surname Yuan. Yuanda was the tribe's hunting captain, the strongest person in the tribe, and also the tribe's real leader in name. Master Zhua, you must be a pharmacist. You can even cure the 7 lives venomous python's poison. You are even better than pharmacist Lu. Among the 5 young men, the chubby young man was the most talkative. On the way, he kept pestering Zhuowen to talk. Zhuowen also knew that the chubby young man was called Yuan Zhong. He was the core figure among the 5, and was also Yuan Kang's buddy in the subway. Pharmacist Lu? Zhuowen asked casually. Yes, pharmacist. Lu used to be a pharmacist in our Yuan tribe. He has great medical skills and can cure all kinds of diseases. Unfortunately, pharmacist Lu left without saying goodbye yesterday. It is said that he is going to the main city of Yunjin region. When Yuan Zhong set up to hear, he became somewhat listless. It seems that you have a good relationship with pharmacist Lu, Zhuowen said with a smile when he saw Yuan Zhong's expression. Haha, pharmacist Zhua, you misunderstood. Brother Zhong, he is not reluctant to leave pharmacist Lu. He is reluctant to leave pharmacist Lu's granddaughter, Lu Miaojin. A few young men behind Yuan Zhong covered their mouths and made fun of him. Yuan Zhong's face turned red, and he hurriedly scolded, I didn't. Don't gossip and accuse me. Chapter 3690. No wonder medicine master Lu pointed him to the Yuan tribe. He wanted him to take over the old man's position as the new medicine master of the Yuan tribe. However, Zhuowen didn't reject it. The night in the 100 Territories was too strange. Plus, he was still injured. The Yuan tribe was indeed the best place for him to stay. Moreover, he could slowly understand where the Yuan tribe was and where it was during the time they landed. After arriving at Yuan Da's house, Yuan Zhong and the other 4 bid farewell to Zhuowen and Yuan Da and left. Yuan Da's house was a very ordinary wooden house. There were about 4 rooms, and it was quite spacious. When Zhuowen woke up in the valley, he had already discovered that the material level of the 100 Territories was much higher than that of the starry sky. For example, he could casually crush a mountain or even a planet in the starry sky. But here in the 100 Territories, he could barely crush a palm-sized rock. Plus, the gravity in the 100 Territories was so terrifying that even Zhuowen was shocked. He couldn't even fly here. No wonder Duan Jipeng told him that if he wanted to fly in the 100 Territories, he had to reach the heaven-crushing 3 transformations and the heaven-trampling transformation. Of course, with the help of a powerful divine ship, he could still fly even if he hadn't reached the heaven-trampling transformation. Now, Zhuowen could understand why the mortals in the 100 Outer Realms had such high cultivation. After all, the environment here was too strong. The living beings here were naturally not ordinary. In Yuan Da's house, other than him and his brother, Yuan Kong, there was also Yuan Da's wife, Yuan Qing. After Yuan Da introduced Zhuowen as a medicine master, Yuan Qing was obviously more respectful to Zhuowen. Medicine Master Zhua, you can stay here today. Tomorrow, I'll bring you to Medicine Master Lu's house. Yuan Da grinned. Brother Yuan, since Medicine Master Lu is your tribe's medicine master, why did he leave without saying goodbye? Zhuowen suddenly asked, "Actually, the reason why Medicine Master Lu can stay in our Yuan tribe is because there are purple god flowers nearby." Medicine Master Lu said before that he would leave after picking enough purple god flowers. Moreover, our tribe has been treated by Master Lu before. His reputation in the Yuan tribe is very high. If he insists on leaving, we will not object. Yuan Da's gaze turned solemn as he said in a low voice, "I also know that the reason Apothecary Lu wants to go to Yunjin City is so that his granddaughter can have a good future. Miaojin is different from us. She possesses a very good Tao foundation, and she'll definitely advance to the heaven-crushing stage in the future. She'll become a supreme being while we're only mortals. Our statuses will be completely different in the future." When he spoke up to hear, Yuan Da revealed an envious expression. He also yearned to possess an ancestral Tao root. Even if it was a bad ancestral Tao root, he would still be able to smoothly attain his Tao and step onto many colorful paths. Unfortunately, he didn't have a Tao root and was only an ordinary mortal. He would never be able to prove his Tao in his lifetime. This kind of thing was already destined at birth and could not be changed. Zhuowen opened his mouth. He wanted to say something, but in the end, he didn't say anything. Actually, he also didn't have a Tao root, but he had succeeded in confirming his Tao by a freak combination of factors. But he knew that this was his secret, and he could not speak of it casually. After that, Zhuowen settled down in the Yuan tribe. Everyone in the tribe also knew that a new medicine master had arrived in the tribe. Moreover, he had cured the poison of the 7 lives venomous python in Yuan Kang's body. This caused Zhuowen's reputation to spread very quickly in the Yuan tribe. After Zhuowen moved into Medicine Master Lu's room, he discovered many medical books in there. Moreover, Zhuowen discovered that these medical books were all written by Medicine Master Lu himself. The wealth of knowledge in these books left even Zhuowen dumbfounded. Medicine and alchemical pills were actually inextricably linked. However, the threshold for alchemical pills was much higher than that of medicine. Moreover, the status of alchemists was much higher than that of medicine masters. Therefore, medicine masters had never been valued among cultivators. On the contrary, alchemists had extremely high statuses. In the past, Zhuowen didn't understand medicine masters, so he looked down on them. But now, after reading these medical books written by Medicine Master Lu, he finally understood that medicine was actually more powerful than alchemical pills in many aspects. In particular, medicine had an innate advantage over alchemical pills when it came to treating difficult and complicated diseases. Among these medical books, the one that made Zhuowen slap the table in praise was a medical book called Meridian Acupuncture Classic. In this book, the method of acupuncture alone was used to stimulate the body's major acupoints. Not only did it have the effect of speeding up one's cultivation, but it also had the miraculous effect of curing hundreds of diseases. Only a set of golden needles was needed to solve many difficult and complicated diseases. In the following time, Zhuowen stayed in the room and studied the medical books in the room as if he was intoxicated. With his comprehension, he could quickly comprehend and memorize all the medical books that he had read. After Zhuowen finished reading all the medical books, more than half a month had passed. His injuries were almost healed after recuperating for more than half a month. Most of the scabs on his face had also fallen off, revealing his fair skin. Although a small portion of scabs remained on his face and still looked a little ugly, his current appearance was much better than when he had just arrived in the Yuan tribe. In the past half a month, Zhuowen did not refuse anyone in the tribe who was injured or seriously ill. He did not use alchemical pills to treat the illness. Instead, he used the knowledge in the medical books to treat the illness with acupuncture and pharmacology. The results were amazing. He could use very common medicinal herbs to solve very complicated diseases and injuries. When he encountered some simple injuries, he did not even need medicinal herbs. He could completely solve them with acupuncture. That pharmacist, Lu, must have deliberately left these medical books here. Zhuowen thought of the old man. Although the old man's attitude towards him was very bad, he could not be blamed. However, he could tell that the old man was not a bad person. Everything he did was to ensure the absolute safety of his granddaughter. Zhuowen could see that the old man would protect Miaozhen at the cost of his life. In the past half a month, Zhuowen also learned a lot about this world from the tribe. Yuanda once told him that the area where the Yuan tribe was located was within the boundaries of Yunjin region. Within the territory of Yunjin region, there were many tribes and villages, as well as a small number of towns. Above Yunjin region was the Ji Prefecture Magistrate. It was said that there were many territories similar to Yunjin region within the Ji Prefecture Magistrate's boundaries. As for what was above the Ji Prefecture Magistrate, Yuanda did not know. Yuanda did not even know which of the 100 domains the Ji Prefecture Magistrate and Yunjin region were located in. Zhuowen understood that Yuanda was only an insignificant mortal in the 100 outer realms. Yuanda had probably never stepped out of Yunjin region's territory in his entire life. In his eyes, the Ji Prefecture Magistrate was an unattainable place. Needless to say, he did not know the names of the real domains in the 100 domains. This was the sorrow of mortals. They were trapped in one place for their entire lives and could not get out of this endless cycle of reincarnation. Zhuowen also knew that if he wanted to understand which domain he was in, he had to go to a higher place. Chapter 36, 91. Another month passed, and Zhuowen's injuries were completely healed. The scabs on his face and body had all fallen off. In this month and a half, Zhuowen could be said to have completely integrated into the Yuan tribe. Yuanda trusted him even more. Moreover, Zhuowen had also obtained the map to Yunjin Hill from Yuanda. However, Zhuowen did not leave the Yuan tribe immediately. He planned to cultivate a medicine master in the Yuan tribe before leaving. It was to repay the Yuan tribe for taking him in. Meanwhile, Zhuowen could use this time to improve his cultivation and cultivate the 7 emotions steel seal. Medicine Master Zhua, are you planning to teach me medical knowledge? Yuan Zhong, who was sitting across from Zhuowen, stood up in shock. Yes, I've observed all of you. Only you are interested in medicine and have some understanding of herbs. If I want to impart medical knowledge to someone, you're the most suitable one. Why? Yuan Zhong, are you unwilling? Zhuowen asked. Yuan Zhong quickly waved his hand and said, Why wouldn't I be willing? Of course I'm willing. Medicine Master Lu said that medical knowledge cannot be taught to outsiders. I wanted to learn but was rejected by Medicine Master Lu. I thought. Zhuowen was stunned. He did not expect Yuan Zhong to be rejected by Medicine Master Lu. Ha ha, Yuan Zhong, Medicine Master Lu was still in your tribe at that time. Now that Medicine Master Lu is no longer here, he left his medical books in your tribe. In fact, he has tacitly agreed to pass them to your tribe. Now, I'm just teaching you medical knowledge on behalf of Medicine Master Lu, Zhuowen said with a smile. Yuan Zhong trembled with excitement and quickly bowed to Zhuowen. Master, Zhuowen smiled faintly. This Yuan Zhong was quite clever. Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, another half a year had passed. In this half a year, other than teaching Yuan Zhong and treating injured hunters, Zhuowen used the rest of his time to cultivate nonstop. Although the chaotic energy in the Yuan tribe could only be considered average, it was rich enough for Zhuowen. His cultivation speed was also very fast. He went from the middle stage of the 5th blight to the peak of the fifth blight. With Zhuowen's perception, the moment his cultivation reached the peak of the fifth blight, he had already touched the threshold of breaking the heavens. Zhuowen believed that if he continued to comprehend, he would be able to successfully break through the heavens in less than a year. However, he stopped cultivating. This was because he had thought of a terrifying fact, and that was whether or not an unbearable calamity would descend upon him the instant he broke through the heavens. He thought back to the miserable state he had been in when he had broken through to the fourth and fifth heavens blight. Thus, he had to be extremely cautious about breaking through to the heaven-crushing stage this time. However, the increase in his cultivation brought him many benefits. His strength had increased by quite a bit. If he didn't rely on his divine sense, he would be able to battle a heaven-crushing first change transformation, divine transformation realm cultivator. At the same time, he began to comprehend the second steel of the seven emotions steel, the enraged steel. The enraged steel was even more powerful than the enraged steel. The main characteristic of this enraged steel was that it could absorb the emotions of anger and continuously accumulate them. Finally, it could unleash a very powerful power. Zhuowen sat cross-legged in the corridor outside the door. His hands were placed on his stomach, and two engravings hovered around him. These two engravings were of different colors. They were pink and red, respectively. The pink engravings were the enraged steel, while the red engravings were the enraged steel. Ever since these two engravings were formed by Zhuowen, they would be attached to his body. Every time he walked past a living being, the two engravings would absorb the power of the corresponding emotions. Moreover, this accumulation would increase exponentially. The method of absorbing the power of emotions was something that Zhuowen had comprehended after comprehending the enraged steel. When he had first cultivated the enraged steel, he only knew how to use the enraged steel to affect his enemy's emotions. However, he hadn't thought that the enraged steel could absorb emotions and increase its power. The more Zhuowen cultivated, the more he admired the talent of the seven emotions, six desires, Holy Lord, who had created this mystical power. Creak! There was a knock on the door. Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes, and the two engravings entered his body. Zhuowen stood up and opened the door. It was Yuanzhong. Master, in the past 6 months, I've learned most of the pharmacology. Next, we should go out to look for herbs to practice, right? Yuanzhong said excitedly. Zhuowen smiled and nodded. You're right. Today I'll go out with you to pick some herbs, and then you can concoct the medicine. Okay, Master, wait for me. I'll go back and get my weapon first. Yuanzhong said with a simple and honest smile. Get your weapon? Zhuowen was surprised. Yes, the forest outside the tribe is very dangerous. It's full of terrifying beasts. Even our hunting team may not be safe when we go out. Master, you're a pharmacist, and your body is weak. Of course, I'll take my weapon to protect you. Yuanzhong said as he ran back to his house. Zhuowen was stunned. He shook his head and said, nothing. With his current strength, there might not be anyone in the whole Yunjin territory who could hurt him. However, the people of the Yuan tribe didn't know that Zhuowen was a cultivator with breaking heaven-tier strength. Added with the fact that Zhuowen looked so weak, they all thought that Zhuowen was only an ordinary pharmacist. In the past 6 months, many people in the tribe took good care of him. Yuanzhong especially took care of him. Usually, when it came to heavy labor like moving things, Yuanzhong would take the lead and help Zhuowen with it. Zhuowen didn't know whether to laugh or cry. However, he didn't plan to show his strength. After all, he liked the atmosphere of the tribe. If the people of the tribe knew that he was an elite with breaking heaven-tier strength, the atmosphere would probably change immediately. During this period of time, he also knew that in the 100 domains outside the realm, there was a huge difference between breaking heaven tier cultivators and mortals. In the eyes of mortals, breaking heaven tier cultivators were high and mighty gods. They could kill them like ants with a flip of their hand. Zhuowen didn't want his relationship with the tribe to be estranged because of his strength. When Yuan Zhong came in front of Zhuowen again, he carried a wooden spear on his back and hurried overexcitedly. What made Zhuowen even more speechless was that behind Yuan Zhong there was a young man who also carried a wooden spear. Zhuowen also knew this young man. It was Yuan Kong, who had been poisoned by the 7 lives venomous python. Yuan Zhong saw Zhuowen's confusion and scratched his head in embarrassment. Master, Yuan Kong knows that we're going out to gather herbs and is worried about our safety, so he also plans to go with us to protect you. Pharmacist Shua, the forest outside the tribe is very dangerous. There are many powerful ferocious beasts. Moreover, it's said that there are ferocious beasts comparable to breaking heaven tier cultivators hidden in the depths of this vast forest. I'm worried about the 2 of you going in alone, so I'll go with you, Yuan Kong said with a grin. When Yuan Kong woke up and knew that it was Zhuowen who saved him, he was grateful and often visited Zhuowen. Moreover, every time he visited, he would bring a lot of delicious game. Chapter 3692. Yuan Kong, does Yuanda know that you're coming with us to pick herbs? Zhuowen asked in a deep voice. Yuan Kong smiled and said, Of course he knows. If he didn't know, I wouldn't even be able to leave the tribe. If that's the case, then come with us. Zhuowen nodded in agreement. An ox cart had already been prepared outside the tribe. Yuan Kong drove the cart, while Zhuowen and Yuanda sat behind. Zhuowen looked at the ox in surprise. This was a black ox. It looked very ordinary, but it had the strength of the Emperor realm. This made Zhuowen speechless. In the 100 territories outside the realm, an ordinary ox was more powerful than many cultivators in the lower realm. Yuan Kong, Yuan Zhong, protect Master Zhuowen on the way. Don't let him get hurt, okay? At this moment, in the tribe, Yuanda led a group of people to send Zhuowen off. During this period of time, Zhuowen's medical skills had long been recognized by everyone. In addition, Zhuowen had saved many people in the tribe, so Zhuowen's prestige in the tribe had become very high, second only to Yuanda, the hunting team leader. This time, when Zhuowen left the tribe and planned to enter the forest to pick herbs, Yuanda and the others were actually a little worried. Yuan Kong and Yuan Zhong hurriedly agreed and expressed that they would definitely protect Zhuowen. Then, they drove the ox cart and left the tribe. Zhuowen and the other 2 headed west. That was the direction of the valley where Zhuowen had been. He planned to go to that valley to take a look. He remembered that there were many purple god flowers in the valley. In addition, there were many other kinds of herbs. Although it was a little far, with the speed of the ox cart, they could reach it in at most 2 hours. After traveling for a distance, Zhuowen suddenly raised his head and looked at the sky behind him with a puzzled expression. Master, what's wrong? Yuan Zhong asked curiously when he saw Zhuowen's abnormal behavior. Nothing. Zhuowen shook his head. The puzzlement in his eyes did not diminish. Just now, he had sensed a powerful fluctuation in the distant horizon. However, that fluctuation quickly disappeared. It came quickly and left quickly. A divine ship appeared in the sky hundreds of thousands of miles away from the Yuan tribe. On the deck of the divine ship stood 2 figures, a man and a woman. The man looked to be in his 40s. He had a goatee and a steady temperament. The woman, on the other hand, was much younger. She had a good figure and a pretty face. Miss, this is the Tsangyan Forest, the most remote place in Yunjin region. This subordinate has investigated. There are a total of over 50 tribes in the Ash Cloud Forest. with a total of over 10,000 people. The middle-aged man said respectfully to the young woman beside him, "More than 10,000? That's just enough for Bloodthorn to complete the first stage of the blood sacrifice." The young woman opened her palm, revealing a blood-red spike pattern on her palm. "Try not to alarm the other tribes. Move quickly," the young woman continued. The middle-aged man nodded. Thus, he put away the divine ship and brought the woman to the nearest tribe. "We finally arrived at the valley. Our luck is really bad this time. We actually encountered a few hidden tigers," Yuan Kong said as he wiped off the sweat on his forehead. As the ox cart arrived at the entrance of a valley, there were bloodstains on his body. However, the bloodstains were not his. They belonged to the hidden tigers that they encountered along the way. It was undeniable that Yuan Kang's strength was not bad. His skills were even above Yuan Zhong's. He alone dealt with the hidden tigers without even needing Yuan Zhong's help. After the three of them entered the valley, they were shocked by the purple god flowers that covered the ground. "Oh my God, there are so many purple god flowers here." Yuan Zhong and Yuan Kong were stunned. The purple god flower was the best healing herb in the ash cloud forest. Especially when mixed by an apothecary, its healing effect was even better. It was the favorite herb of many tribes in the ash cloud forest. However, although the ash cloud forest was huge, there were not many purple god flowers. Usually, the supply could not meet the demand. However, there were so many purple god flowers in the valley. It was much more than what Yuan Kong and Yuan Zhong had seen in the past few years. How could they not be shocked? "We are rich. There are so many purple god flowers. Our Yuan tribe can use them for a long time in the future. We can even sell them to other tribes." Yuan Kong laughed. "You two brats, don't pick too many. Since there are so many purple god flowers growing here, it is obvious that the soil here is suitable for them to grow. Leave a portion to grow in the future. In the future, your Yuan tribe will have an inexhaustible supply of purple god flowers." Zhuowen reminded them. Yuan Kong and Yuan Zhong came to their senses and nodded their heads. If not for Zhuowen's reminder, these two fellows who lost their heads from being carried away would probably really pluck all the violet god flowers here clean. While Yuan Kong and Yuan Zhong were busy picking the purple god flowers, Zhuowen entered the cave again. However, he did not find anything in the cave. The old man and the young girl had already left. Zhuowen sighed softly. He wondered if he would meet this pair of grandfather and granddaughter again when he went to Yunjin territory. At the same time, Zhuowen thought of Moyan Wushang. Back then, the heartless and desireless pearl had brought Moyan Wushang into the 100 domains. However, he did not know where the heartless and desireless pearl was now. "I don't even know which domain I am in now. It is too early to think about this." Zhuowen smiled bitterly. He knew that he was too weak now. After he became stronger, he could entrust some powerful organizations to find the whereabouts of the heartless and desireless pearl. As long as he could find the heartless and desireless pearl, he would be able to find Moyan Wushang. Of course, the prerequisite was that he had to become stronger first. After that, Zhuowen waited for Yuan Zhong to pick the other medicinal herbs in the valley. Then he began to teach Yuan Zhong how to make medicine. Yuan Zhong was very serious about learning. He was also very perceptive. After failing a few times, he made the simplest healing medicine. Yuan Kong was guarding the entrance of the valley to prevent wild beasts from invading and disturbing Zhuowen and Yuan Zhong. After Zhuowen handed over a few simple methods of making medicine, he realized that it was already afternoon. "Yuan Zhong, let's go back. The medicinal herbs you picked this time are enough for you to practice for half a month. After you are done practicing, you can come and pick the medicinal herbs." Zhuowen said. Yuan Zhong nodded. After packing up, he followed Zhuowen out of the valley. When Yuan Kong saw the two of them coming out, he hurriedly brought the ox cart over. After Zhuowen and Yuan Zhong got on the ox cart, he drove the ox cart back to the tribe along the original path. When Zhuowen and the other two returned to the tribe, two uninvited guests came to the Yuan tribe. These two people were the middle-aged man and the young woman. "Uncle Zhou, I can feel the power of the blood thorn. It seems to be excited. The endless power is really too strong." The young woman looked at the crowd in the Yuan tribe and licked her lips. Her eyes were filled with bloodlust and greed. "If I kill more people, Bloodthorn will accept me. I will be able to obtain even more power." As she spoke, the young woman walked towards the entrance of the Yuan tribe. The middle-aged man's eyes flickered, but he still followed closely behind. "Who are you?" At the entrance of the tribe, a hunting team member was guarding. He held a wooden spear and stopped the young woman and the middle-aged man. You are all my food." Chapter 3693. Thump. This hunting squad member's pupils were wide open as he stared fixedly at the young woman in front of him. He never would have thought that this young woman would actually suddenly make a move to take his life. Murder! Within the tribe, some of the clansmen near the entrance saw the young woman dig out the heart of the hunting squad member at the entrance, and they instantly screamed, their gazes filled with terror. Yuanda heard the news and quickly brought the hunting squad over. When he saw the hunting squad member at the entrance had his heart pierced and was casually thrown on the ground, his pupils couldn't help but constrict. Yuanda's gaze was cold as he looked at the young woman and middle-aged man at the entrance. Suppressing the anger in his heart, he said in a low voice, "Friends, our Yuan tribe has never met you. Why did you attack us?" The young woman looked indifferently at Yuanda and mocked, "Do I need a reason to kill you lowly mortals? If I want to kill you, I'll kill you. Moreover, to be able to die in my hands, it's the fortune of you lowly mortals. You should be kneeling on the ground and piously begging for death." Yuanda's expression changed greatly, and he had a bad guess in his heart. We're shattering heaven realm cultivators. You ants without Dao roots, do you still want to resist me?" The young woman mocked. Thump. Once the young woman's words left her mouth, everyone in the tribe was so scared that they went limp on the ground. A shattering heaven realm expert, in their eyes, was a godlike existence. Such an existence could crush all of them to death with a single finger. Yuanda knelt heavily on the ground and fiercely kowtowed. "Milords, if our Yuan tribe has offended you in any way, then come at me, Yuanda. Let my clansmen go. Yuanda, beg you, milords." After Yuanda finished speaking, he continuously kowtowed, and his posture was very humble. He was very clear how strong a shattering heaven realm expert was. Crushing their tribe to death was as easy as crushing ants. The clansmen of the Yuan tribe also knelt on the ground, their gazes revealing reverence, and they all begged for the two's forgiveness. Bang! The young woman took a step forward and kicked Yuanda's body. Puchi! Yuanda spat out a mouthful of blood and flew out, smashing into the house closest to him. Yuanda struggled for a long time in the ruins, but he couldn't get up at all. He could only barely crawl out. Mortals will always be mortals. I only used a little bit of my strength, and you can't take it anymore. How weak! A mocking look appeared in the young woman's eyes as she laughed disdainfully. The people of the Yuan tribe all knelt on the ground with their heads lowered. They didn't say a word as they silently endured the young woman's mockery. "My lord, we're only mortals, ants. Can you let us go? We're just ants in your eyes." Yuanda struggled to get up, looked straight at the young woman, and asked word by word, "No, and I'm going to kill everyone in your tribe. All of you are my sacrifices." The young woman's lips curled into a mocking smile. The words she said made everyone in the Yuan tribe despair. A bitter smile appeared on Yuan Da's face. He knew that their Yuan tribe was finished. "Uncle Zhou, kill them all." The young woman said to the middle-aged man behind her. The middle-aged man's lips curled into a faint smile, and he said, "There are so few people in this tribe. I don't even need to do anything. My pet can get rid of these people." As he spoke, the middle-aged man waved his right hand, and a huge python that was dozens of feet long appeared out of thin air. It spat out its green tongue as it looked down coldly at the people below. The people of the Yuan tribe were all trembling as they curled up together. "If you dare to do anything, you won't be able to leave the Yuan tribe alive today." Suddenly, at the entrance of the tribe, a cold voice slowly sounded. The voice was like thunder ringing in everyone's ears. Suddenly, the people of the Yuan tribe all looked at the entrance of the tribe. Even the young woman and the middle-aged man couldn't help but look at the entrance of the tribe. They saw 3 figures appear at the entrance of the tribe. The person in the lead was wearing a long black robe, and he looked to be around 27 or 28 years old. The 2 people behind the young man in the black robe were around 20 years old. They were both wearing animal skin clothes, and it was obvious that they were from the Yuan tribe. The 3 of them were Zhuowen, Yuan Kong, and Yuan Zhong, who had returned from the valley. When they arrived at the entrance of the tribe, they saw the hunting team member, who was killed. Their expressions changed drastically, and they hurriedly entered the tribe. They saw everyone in the tribe kneeling in front of the unfamiliar man and woman. "Father!" "Captain!" Yuan Kong and Yuan Zhong saw Yuan Da, who was lying in the ruins not far away. Their expressions changed drastically, and they both ran towards Yuan Da. The young woman and the middle-aged man didn't stop Yuan Kong and Yuan Zhong, but looked at Zhuowen, who was wearing a black robe, with an unfriendly gaze. "What did you just say?" The young woman looked at Zhuowen from head to toe and asked faintly. "I said, if you dare to do anything, you won't be able to leave the Yuan tribe alive today." Zhuowen said calmly. The young woman's expression darkened, but she laughed. "You're just a 5th blight ant. Do you know who you're facing? With your cultivation level, I can crush you to death with one hand." Zhuowen's expression was still calm. He had already seen through the cultivation of the man and woman. The young woman should have just advanced to the first heaven-breaching transformation stage. She was only at the early stage of the first heaven-breaching transformation stage, and her aura wasn't even stable yet. As for the middle-aged man, his aura was much more stable than the woman's. He should be at the peak of the first heaven-breaching transformation stage. With Zhuowen's current strength, these 2 people were nothing in his eyes. However, Zhuowen found it strange that these 2 first heaven-breaching transformation stage experts would come to the ash cloud forest. As far as he knew, the ash cloud forest was the most remote area in the Yunjin region. Here, the people who lived were basically mortals. Even if they were cultivators, they were only ordinary cultivators who couldn't break through the first heaven-breaching transformation stage. But now, 2 first heaven-breaching transformation stage experts suddenly appeared. This was a bit strange. "Medicine Master Zhua, leave quickly. These 2 people are first heaven-breaching realm cultivators. They're not people we mortals can afford to offend." Yuanda hurriedly said to Zhuowen. At the same time, Yuanda stood up with difficulty, knelt down, and said to the young woman and the middle-aged man, "Lords, Medicine Master Zhua isn't a member of our Yuan tribe. He's just passing by our Yuan tribe. You're only looking for trouble with our Yuan tribe. It has nothing to do with Medicine Master Zhua." Yuan Zhong and Yuan Kong were dumbstruck instead. They never would have imagined that this young woman and middle-aged man were actually two heaven-shattering realm powerhouses. Chapter 36:94. Noisy. The young woman snorted. The giant python beside her suddenly rushed out, opened its bloody mouth, and tried to swallow Yuan Kong, Yuan Zhong, and Yuanda, and the other two were already scared stiff. They watched as the giant python arrived in front of them. In the next second, its bloody mouth was about to swallow them completely. At this moment, a figure stood in front of the three of them. Shua Wen's fist landed on the python's head. Bang! This punch was powerful and heavy. The giant python screamed as its head was smashed into smithereens. It fell to the ground and breathed its last. Yuanda and the other two looked at the giant python's corpse in a daze. Then, their gazes fell on the figure who punched the giant python to death. They were surprised to find that the figure was none other than Master Zhua, who was so weak in their eyes. The people of the Yuan tribe were also dumbfounded as they looked at Zhuowen. Master Zhua, who usually looked weak, killed such a terrifying giant python with one punch. It was unbelievable. The young woman and the middle-aged man's expressions changed slightly. The giant python's strength was around the early stage of the fifth decay. It was easy for it to deal with ordinary fifth decay cultivators. However, it was killed by this person with one punch. Interesting? Your strength has somewhat exceeded my expectations. However, the fifth heaven's decay is only the fifth heaven's decay in the end. You'll soon know how great the gap between you and Heavenbreaker is. The young woman sneered as a powerful aura exploded from her body. This aura was too terrifying. The people of the Yuan tribe could not help but lie on the ground under this aura as if there was a giant rock on their bodies. "Miss, let me do it," the middle-aged man said. The young woman shook her head and said, "Uncle Zhou, you don't need to do anything for this aunt. After all, I just broke through and haven't tested my strength yet. Now is a good opportunity." Hearing this, the middle-aged man nodded and took a step back. Zhuowen had killed the giant python with a single punch, which had shocked him. However, in his opinion, this black-robed young man was far from being a match for the young woman. "Let's fight outside the tribe." Zhuowen's eyes were calm. He took a step forward, and his figure was like a ghost as he rushed out of the open space outside the tribe. The young woman frowned slightly. She looked coldly at the people of the Yuan tribe and left the tribe as well. In her opinion, these mortals could be killed at any time. But the black-robed youth in front of her really made her unhappy. He was clearly fifth blight trash, yet he dared to act so pretentious in front of her. She wanted to see what kind of expression this young man would have when she stepped on him. After Zhuowen, the young woman and the middle-aged man left the tribe. Yuanda and the others let out sighs of relief. "Father, Apothecary Zhuo wants to fight with them. What should we do?" Those two were heaven-shattering realm powerhouses. How could Master Zhuo possibly be a match for him? Yuan Kong said anxiously. Yuanda smiled bitterly and could only console her. "Alchemist, Zhuo might have a way to escape. After all, he's also a cultivator." Yuan Kong and Yuan Zhong looked at each other and revealed a bitter smile. From the young woman's words and expression, they could see that Zhuowen's cultivation was much weaker than theirs. There was no doubt that Zhuowen was much weaker in this battle. Bang! Suddenly, a terrifying fluctuation came from outside the tribe. Then Yuanda and the others saw a figure flying back in a sorry state and smashing into a house not far away. Rumble! That house directly collapsed and turned into ruins. "It's over." Apothecary Zhuo lost so quickly. The bitter smile on Yuanda's face became more and more intense, and the people of the tribe were even more deathly silent. Their faces were filled with despair. They also knew that after Apothecary Joie died, it would be their turn. At this moment, a figure flashed over from the entrance of the tribe. This figure was the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man came to the ruins with an anxious expression and picked up the figure that fell in the ruins. Isn't that Apothecary Joie? That's that woman. Yuan Kong couldn't help but cry out as if he had seen a ghost. Yuanda, who originally revealed a look of despair, couldn't help but look over. He just happened to see the figure that the middle-aged man helped up. It was actually that young woman. The young woman's face was as pale as snow, and there was a huge knife wound on her chest that was bleeding nonstop. This lord was defeated. Yuan Da's pupils contracted to the size of needles, and his heart was like raging waves, extremely unsettled. Didn't this young woman vow that Apothecary Joie was an ant that couldn't even crush the heavens? Why was this woman defeated by Apothecary Joie now? Could it be that Apothecary Joie was actually also a heaven-crushing cultivator, and one that was even more powerful than this woman? So weak, are you really at the divine fetal transformation stage? At this moment, Zhuowen slowly walked over from the entrance of the tribe. His figure became incomparably tall in the eyes of the people of the tribe. Splat! The young woman was so angry that she spat out another mouthful of blood. She stared coldly at Zhuowen, but her heart was like raging waves in a stormy sea. She couldn't understand how Zhuowen was clearly only a fifth heaven's blight cultivator. So how could he be so powerful? Her attack was broken in just one move, and then she was severely injured by Zhuowen's primordial flying blade. The middle-aged man's expression became more and more serious as he stared intently at Zhuowen, who was standing at the entrance of the tribe. He had seen the moment when the two of them exchanged blows. The strength that Zhuowen had erupted with was extremely terrifying and definitely not inferior to his. This person was definitely at the late stage of the divine fetal transformation stage, or even the peak of the divine fetal transformation stage. I really didn't expect that a peak divine fetal transformation stage expert would be willing to live in seclusion here and even become the apothecary of this small tribe, the middle-aged man said solemnly. Zhuowen didn't comment. His cultivation was only at the peak of the fifth heaven's blight, but he couldn't be bothered to explain to the middle-aged man. Sir, before you attack, you'd better think twice before you act. We're from the Yunjin Overlord residence, and Miss Yufu is the daughter of the Yunjin Overlord. Now that you've injured Miss Yufu, you've already committed treason. If you don't want to be hunted down by the Yunjin Overlord residence, kneel in front of Miss Yufu now, kowtow apologize, and become Miss Yufu's most loyal dog. When the middle-aged man saw that Zhuowen was about to walk over again, his eyes narrowed slightly, and he explained their origins. What? They're actually from the Yunjin Overlord residence. Heavens, this... Yuanda almost cried out in shock. Although he was only a mortal, as a person from the Yunjin territory, he naturally knew about the existence of the Yunjin Overlord residence. It was the highest organization that ruled the entire Yunjin territory, and the Yunjin Overlord was the ruler of Yunjin territory. He had supreme authority and power, and was an existence that they respected like a god. These two people were actually from the Yunjin Overlord residence, and the young woman was the daughter of the Yunjin Overlord residence. Her identity was too noble. Yuanda and the others thought that Zhuowen would be afraid of the Yunjin Overlord residence. Unexpectedly, Zhuowen's expression was very calm, and there was nothing strange about it. Chapter 36:95. How dare you say that you want to kill us? The middle-aged man's face turned gloomy, and anger rose in his heart. The Yunjin Lord Mansion had supreme authority in the Yunjin territory, and no cultivator dared to overstep their authority. However, the young man in front of him was too presumptuous. After knowing that they were from the Yunjin Lord Mansion, he still dared to kill them. Originally, I saw that you were a talent and wanted to give you a way out by letting you join the Yunjin Lord Mansion. Unfortunately, you didn't cherish the opportunity. The middle-aged man slowly stood up, and his eyes shone with a blazing cold light and murderous intent. At the same time, an extremely terrifying aura erupted from the middle-aged man's body. This aura was much stronger than the young woman's, the peak of the divine transformation stage. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and saw the middle-aged man's specific cultivation at a glance. Yuanda and the group of people from the Yuan tribe were trembling in fear. Although they were not clear about the middle-aged man's specific cultivation, they could feel that the middle-aged man was much stronger than the young woman. Master Zhua, Yuan Kong and Yuan Zhong were even more worried. Uncle Zhou, kill him for me. The young woman, Yu Fu, shouted with resentment in her eyes. She wanted to make Zhuo, this fellow who did not know the immensity of heaven and earth, pay a disastrous price. The middle-aged man nodded and strode toward Zhuowen. His aura was getting stronger and stronger. Superpower tornado. The middle-aged man knew that Zhuowen was not weak, so he did not dare to be careless in this battle. He used his best superpower tornado right from the start. A violent wind rose around Zhuowen. The wind was like a whirlpool that wrapped around Zhuowen and trapped him like a prison. At the same time, the middle-aged man took a step forward, and his speed suddenly increased. In an instant, he appeared above Zhuowen's head. The middle-aged man blasted out a palm and landed on the top of Zhuowen's head. The main function of the superpower tornado was to bind. It could use the strong power of the tornado to completely imprison the enemy's movements. You're dead meat. The middle-aged man sneered as he unleashed the power of his palm. Zhuowen was still standing in his original spot. Suddenly, his entire body erupted with purple light, and soon after, purple snow began to fall around him. The purple snow drifted and actually broke the surrounding whirlwinds. At the same time, the moment the middle-aged man's palm landed on the top of Zhuowen's head, he stomped on the ground with his right foot and disappeared like a ghost. The middle-aged man's expression changed slightly. He abruptly withdrew his palm force and blasted it behind him. Bang! His palm slammed into a purple saber light. The powerful force forced him to retreat. However, the middle-aged man was not a simple person. Although Zhuowen's figure had become erratic under the enhancement of the purple snow, he was still very calm. He kicked out with both feet and disappeared from where he stood like a breeze. His speed was not inferior to Zhuowen's at all. Bang, bang, bang. Instantly, two figures that could only be seen as afterimages collided with each other in midair, creating extremely terrifying energy ripples. So fast, so powerful. All of the members of the Yuan tribe were stunned. Looking at the two afterimages that could barely be seen, they finally truly understood just how terrifying and powerful heaven-crushing cultivators were. Yu Fu's expression changed drastically. She was very clear about Uncle Zhou's strength. He was at the peak of the divine fetal transformation stage, yet he was unable to do anything to this black-robed young man. What was even more unbearable for Yu Fu was that the two of them were actually evenly matched. She even suspected that Zhuowen was really a fifth blight cultivator. Damn it! If I could complete the initial blood sacrifice, then I would be able to use the power of the blood thorn. How could I allow this piece of trash to be so arrogant? Yu Fu looked at the blood-colored pattern on her right palm with an unwilling expression in her beautiful eyes. The blood sacrifice was not complete, so the astral weapon on her body would not listen to her, nor would it give her power. After about a few hundred rounds, Zhuowen and the middle-aged man both retreated dozens of steps after exchanging a heavy punch. They stopped on both sides and faced each other from a distance. The middle-aged man stared at Zhuowen with a serious gaze and said in a deep voice, "Sir, I'm Zhou Xianwen of the Yunjin Lord's estate. I can guarantee that if you join the Yunjin Lord's estate, you will definitely be put in an important position." The middle-aged man was very clear that a peak divine fetal transformation stage cultivator was already considered a powerhouse in the Yunjin Lord's estate. Even within the Yunjin Lord's estate, there were not many of such powerhouses. The young man in front of him did not look more than 10,000 years old, but he had the strength of a peak divine fetal transformation stage cultivator. Such a genius was very rare in the Yunjin Lord's estate. Therefore, Zhou Xianwen wanted to rope him in, and his attitude was much better than before. "You don't have the qualifications to rope me in," Zhuowen said indifferently. The middle-aged man was so angry that his eyes almost popped out. This Zhuowen was too ungrateful. I tried to rope him in with good intentions, but he rejected me without hesitation. "Tell me, why do you want to deal with the Yuan tribe?" Zhuowen suddenly asked. The middle-aged man said coldly, "I can't tell you that. Since you don't know what's good for you, I don't have to hold back. I'll destroy you today." As he said that, the middle-aged man took out a golden feather fan from his spirit ring. "Humph." Uncle Zhou took out the golden afterglow fan. "This guy is dead, for sure." When Yu Fu saw the middle-aged man take out the golden afterglow fan, the corners of her mouth revealed a trace of a sinister smile. This golden afterglow fan was a rank 1 heaven-breaking divine artifact. Its power was terrifyingly powerful. One had to know that in the 100 outer territories, heaven-breaking divine artifacts were very rare. Many heaven-breaking 3rd transformation and 4th transformation powerhouses did not have a decent divine artifact. Generally, those who could possess divine artifacts were people with powerful backgrounds and strength. This golden afterglow fan was given to Zhou Xianwen by her father. With Zhou Xianwen's strength combined with the golden afterglow fan, it was enough to withstand the attack of an early heaven-breaking 2nd transformation cultivator. "Oh, rank 1 heaven-breaking divine artifact." Zhuowen raised his eyebrows. He did not expect this middle-aged man to have a heaven-breaking divine artifact. He had heard from Duan Jipeng that there had always been a shortage of heaven-breaking divine artifacts in the 100 outer territories. This middle-aged man was only at the fetal god transformation stage, but he already had a heaven-breaking divine artifact. It seemed like he was quite wealthy. "Sir, I'll give you one more chance now. This is your last chance. Join the Yunjin Lord's residence." The middle-aged man held the golden afterglow fan in his hand, and his entire person became domineering and confident. However, Zhuowen shook his head and said mockingly, "I said, you're not qualified. So what if you take out a heaven-breaking divine artifact? If you're not qualified, then you're not qualified." Yu Fu sneered and whispered, "What an idiot!" With the golden afterglow fan, Uncle Zhou's strength will increase by several times. You're a frog at the bottom of a well. The middle-aged man's gaze became even colder. "If that's the case, then don't blame me for being rude." As he spoke, the middle-aged man stood still and waved the golden afterglow fan in his hand. Chapter 36:96. The people of the Yuan tribe had already left the tribe. They looked at the ruins of the tribe that had been destroyed by the energy of the golden light, and were all in despair. The destruction caused by the middle-aged man was beyond their imagination. How could Master Zhuo withstand such power? When the golden light gradually faded, the middle-aged man's face changed. He found that Zhuowen, who he thought would be dead, was standing quietly on the spot. A divine sword that was burning with the green lotus flame was surrounding Zhuowen's body. However, he could see that the divine sword was not real but was somewhat illusory. How is this possible? The middle-aged man's pupils contracted, and he could not help but take a step back. It can't be. This guy is unscathed. Yu Fu's beautiful eyes were wide open as she looked at Zhuowen in disbelief. The people of the Yuan tribe were even more stunned. Is this all you've got? You're too weak. Zhuowen walked over slowly with a calm look. The soul sword essence was blooming with the green lotus flame, and it surrounded his body. You didn't use your full strength just now? Zhou Xianwen's face darkened. Who are you? I'm just a nobody, but it's enough to kill you. After Zhuowen finished speaking, he turned into a shadow and arrived in front of Zhou Xianwen in an instant. Zhou Xianwen roared and blocked in front of him with the golden glow fan in his hand. A gust of golden wind whistled. Sword slash! Zhuowen sneered and raised his right sword finger above his head and slashed down. The soul sword essence with the surging green lotus flame smashed down vertically from above. The golden wind was torn apart by the terrifying sword essence. Then, the soul sword essence slashed on the golden glow fan. The terrifying green lotus flame exploded and instantly ignited a terrifying sea of fire around Zhou Xianwen. Crack! The golden glow fan in front of Zhou Xianwen shattered, and his body was engulfed by the green lotus flame. He let out a shrill scream. However, the scream did not last long. Zhou Xianwen was completely burned to ashes, and even his spiritual soul was not spared. Looking at Zhou Xianwen, who was completely burned to ashes, Zhuowen revealed a pained expression. The green lotus fire was too powerful. Even Zhou Xianwen was burned to ashes, which meant that this person's spirit ring and the golden cloud fan were also destroyed. He would not be able to get any benefits. No. How is this possible? Uncle Zhou is dead? Yu Fu slumped to the side. Her eyes glazed over. The people of the Yuan tribe kept quiet out of fear as they looked at Zhuowen with eyes full of respect. Zhou Xianwen was such a powerful expert, yet he was easily dealt with by Zhuowen. They also knew that Zhuowen should be a very powerful and terrifying expert. Zhuowen walked towards Yu Fu and lifted her up. He said indifferently, "Speak. Why did you come to Ash Cloud Forest? Why did you kill the people of the Yuan tribe?" Yu Fu finally came back to her senses. She looked at Zhuowen, her eyes filled with fear, and said repeatedly, "I beg you to let me go. As long as you let me go, I will ask my father to bestow you with many cultivation resources. I beg you." Yu Fu no longer had any intention to resist. She only begged Zhuowen to spare her life. "Answer my question. I don't have enough patience. Maybe I can't wait, and will search your soul. When there is a problem with your soul, don't blame me," Zhuowen said indifferently. Yu Fu's delicate body trembled, and she screamed, "Don't search my soul. I will tell you. I will tell you now. I won't hide anything." Thus, under Zhuowen's coercion and enticement, Yu Fu confessed her purpose of coming to Ash Cloud Forest in full detail. After Zhuowen heard it, his face did not look too good. It turned out that Yu Fu and Zhou Xianwen came to Ash Cloud Forest to kill the mortals here, to complete the blood sacrifice, and develop the astral weapon fragment, Bloodthorn, in Yu Fu's body. Zhuowen grabbed Yu Fu's palm. Sure enough, he saw a blood-red pattern on her palm, which looked like some kind of sharp thorn. "You plan to slaughter the Yuan tribe." Zhuowen's gaze became colder and colder. He really did not expect that Yu Fu and the others came to slaughter these weak mortals. This was too much. It was normal for cultivators to die in a fight, but for cultivators to slaughter mortals unilaterally, this was against the laws of nature and was extremely cruel. Although Zhuowen heard from Duan Jipeng that the astral weapon required a blood sacrifice, he had never seen it with his own eyes. But now that he saw it with his own eyes, his heart was filled with anger. He had stayed in the Yuan tribe for more than half a year and had a certain degree of affection for the tribe. If he did not arrive in time, the Yuan tribe would have been slaughtered. Fellow Taoist, I have already told you everything I know. Shouldn't you let me go? Yu Fu asked tentatively. Of course, I can let you go, but you have to hand over the blood thorn in your body, Zhuowen said indifferently. After knowing that the astral weapon required a blood sacrifice, Zhuowen hated the astral weapon more and more. If Yu Fu still had this astral weapon fragment on her, she would come to the ash cloud forest to slaughter mortals in the future. If he wanted to put an end to this, he had to take away the astral weapon fragment on her body. What? You are too much. The blood thorn is the astral weapon fragment that my father obtained with great difficulty. How dare you take it away? Don't even think about it, Yu Fu shouted. Then, her right hand suddenly flashed with a terrifying bloody light and suddenly blasted towards Zhuowen's abdomen. Zhuowen was already on guard against Yu Fu. He took a few steps back and also blasted out a palm. Puchi, Zhuowen only felt that he had hit some kind of sharp thorn. His palm was penetrated and blood spurted out. And Yu Fu took this opportunity to summon a divine ship and fled into the distance. You are courting death. Zhuowen's gaze darkened. He shouted angrily and summoned a divine soul sword intent and stood on the divine ship. Boom! The divine ship exploded, and Yu Fu vomited a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. Her beautiful face was terrifyingly pale. Looking at Yu Fu's appearance, Zhuowen knew that she must have sacrificed herself to the astral weapon fragment on her body and activated the power of the blood thorn in advance. Otherwise, with Yu Fu's strength, it would be difficult for her to hurt him. And what made Zhuowen even more surprised was that his palm was bleeding after being hit by the blood thorn. Even if he used the shattered divine soul sword to stop the bleeding, the effect was very poor. It was very difficult to completely stop the bleeding. This astral weapon fragment is indeed something. Zhuowen's face was gloomy. He took a step forward and arrived in front of Yu Fu. He did not even wait for Yu Fu to speak and pointed his left sword finger at Yu Fu's glabella. The powerful shattered divine soul sword invaded her divine soul world and completely destroyed her divine soul. Yu Fu screamed, and her eyes widened. She was no longer breathing. After Yu Fu died, Zhuowen casually shot out a divine flame and burned Yu Fu and the astral weapon in her body to ashes. However, Zhuowen soon discovered that there was a bloody light flickering in the ashes. He saw a sharp thorn that was a few inches long lying quietly in the ashes, flashing with a bloody light. Chapter 36:97. Zhuowen played with the blood thorn in his hand and observed it for a while. He found that there was nothing special about this blood thorn other than its material being different from a heaven-breaking divine artifact. However, Zhuowen did not underestimate this blood thorn. His right palm was still bleeding, and with his shattering divine power, he could only reduce the bleeding. It would probably take at least a few hours to completely stop the bleeding. From this, it could be seen how terrifying this blood thorn was. This bleeding effect made Zhuowen very wary. He also knew very well that if this blood thorn pierced the enemy's vital parts, with its bleeding effect, it would be enough to cause a terrifying injury to the enemy. Zhuowen put away the blood thorn. After all, this item was a fragment of an astral weapon. Although he did not know the specific grade and use of this astral weapon, he did know that astral weapons were very precious in the 100 territories outside the realm. Although he did not like the blood sacrifice function of an astral weapon, this item was indeed of research value. When he had time, he would properly study this blood thorn. At this moment, the people of the Yuan tribe had already entered the ruins of the tribe. They naturally saw the scene of Zhuowen killing Yu Fu and Zhou Xianwen. These two people were high and mighty heaven-breaking realm elites. In the blink of an eye, they were killed by Master Zhua, who was just an ordinary person in their eyes. Master Zhua, no, Lord Zhua, they are people from the Yunjin Lord's estate. You killed them. I'm afraid there will be big trouble. Yuanda opened his mouth. He wanted to call Zhuowen Master Zhua, but soon realized that it was wrong and hurriedly changed it to an honorific. Moreover, when Yuanda said this, he did not dare to get close to Zhuowen. Instead, he stood a few meters away from Zhuowen and clasped his hands respectfully. Yuan Zhong and Yuan Kang, who were usually closest to Zhuowen, looked at Zhuowen with complicated expressions. They also did not dare to get close to Zhuowen in the slightest, but looked at Zhuowen in awe. As for the rest of the tribe, they all lowered their heads, not daring to look at Zhuowen. It was as if looking at Zhuowen would offend Zhuowen. Zhuowen was stunned, and then he sighed deeply in his heart. Only now did he realize exactly how great the gap and barrier between Heaven-Breaker realm experts and mortals in the 100 Outer Regions was. In the eyes of mortals, heaven-shattering realm experts were lofty existences that were otherworldly, and they had to revere them like gods, not daring to have the slightest bit of disobedience or refutation. Now that he was recognized as a Heaven-Breaker master by the Yuan tribe, he knew that he could no longer stay in the Yuan tribe. It doesn't matter. Yunjin Lord's mansion might not be able to catch me. Zhuowen's gaze was calm. During his time in the Yuan tribe, he wasn't really isolated from the rest of the world. He would often come into contact with some cultivators who ventured into the Tsangyan forest, as well as the caravans that passed by. As a result, he had a general understanding of the forces in Yunjin territory. Yunjin Lord's mansion was indeed the most powerful force in Yunjin Hill. It was also the actual governing body of Yunjin Hill. Yunjin Lord could be said to be one of the strongest cultivators in Yunjin Hill, and his cultivation was said to be at the heaven-trampling change of the heaven-breaking 3 transformations. The heaven-trampling change already had the ability to trample the heavens, and its strength would also undergo a metamorphosis. It would be far, far stronger than the spirit change of the heaven-breaking 2nd transformation. Although Zhuowen's current strength was still not a match for the heaven-trampling change, it wouldn't be so easy for a heaven-trampling change cultivator to kill him. In Zhuowen's opinion, there might not be a cultivator in the entire Yunjin Hill who could kill him, Zhuowen. This was also the reason why he could kill Zhou Xianwen and Yu Fu without hesitation. Yuanda smiled and nodded repeatedly. He didn't dare to refute Zhuowen. Zhuowen took out a formation plate and handed it to Yuanda, saying, "I thank your Yuan tribe for taking me in for more than half a year. This is a heaven-breaking grade 1 defensive formation. You can set it up in the core of the tribe. Even if a fetus god transformation cultivator comes, they might not be able to break it." Yuanda's hands trembled, and he almost lost his grip on the formation plate. A heaven-breaking grade formation was something he had only heard of in legends. The Yuan tribe had never even seen a formation before, but now Zhuowen had set up a heaven-breaking grade formation right off the bat. How could Yuanda not be shocked? "Master Zhua, this formation plate is too precious. We dare not accept it." Yuanda smiled bitterly. "Yuanda, I told you to accept it. So accept it. I, Zhuowen, will repay kindness with kindness and revenge with revenge. Your Yuan tribe took me in, which is a favor to me. This formation plate is what your tribe deserves." Zhuowen said solemnly. Yuanda was stunned, but he could only nod. Zhuowen's gaze fell on Yuan Zhong. Yuan Zhong felt Zhuowen's gaze, and his gaze was a little evasive. He said guiltily, "Master, Yuan Zhong, your talent in medicine is very strong. You've also learned how to concoct medicine. You've already finished your apprenticeship." As he spoke, Zhuowen took out a book and handed it to Yuan Zhong. "This is the pharmacology experience I've written in the past 6 months. Take it and study it well. It'll be very beneficial to your understanding of medicine." Zhuowen continued. Yuan Zhong took the book and looked at Zhuowen. He opened his mouth and whispered, "Master, are you planning to leave?" Zhuowen nodded and said, "Yes, and Yuan Zhong, do you still remember that valley? I suggest that your Yuan tribe move to that valley after I leave. Yu Fu and Zhou Xianwen died here. Yunjin Lord's mansion should send people to investigate if you go to that valley, and with the formation I gave you, the people from Yunjin Lord's mansion won't be able to find your tribe." After Zhuowen finished speaking, he walked toward the dense forest outside the tribe. Soon, Zhuowen's figure disappeared into the forest. Yuanda and the others had complicated expressions. In the end, they all knelt on the ground and bowed to Zhuowen from afar. "Big brother, Lord Zhuo is right. It's very dangerous here. Let's move the tribe to that valley." Yuan Kong said to Yuanda, "All right, then let's move the tribe." Yuanda said with a determined gaze. Night gradually fell. The entire ash cloud forest began to become gloomy and strange in the dark night. Zhuowen found a tree hole and set it up as a temporary cave residence. He took out the formation plate that Lu Miaozhen gave him. The formation plate emitted a faint light that wrapped around Zhuowen's body. Not long after, the entire ash cloud forest sank into darkness. It was invincible. Zhuowen sat cross-legged in the light source, but his gaze became extremely solemn. This was because he sensed that there were many strange things flying in the darkness outside the light source, and they were emitting a terrifying sound. Zhuowen knew that it was the work of evil spirits again. Chapter 3698. Zhuowen didn't pay any attention to the evil spirit in the darkness. Instead, he sat down cross-legged and began to cultivate. In reality, he had already reached the peak of the fifth heaven's decay. With his natural talent, it would only take a single thought for him to immediately crush the heavens. However, he was wary of the tribulation that would descend upon him after crushing the heavens. Based on his past experience, the tribulation that would descend upon him in the instant of crushing the heavens would definitely far surpass the first heaven transformation stage. If he wasn't confident, he wouldn't be in a hurry to break through. However, he was only cultivating now to prepare for his ascension after breaking through. This was because once he had enough accumulation, he wouldn't just be at the early stage of the divine fetus transformation stage. Instead, he would instantly reach the late stage of the divine fetus transformation stage, or even the peak stage. I hope I can find information about weakening the great heaven-crushing tribulation when I reach the cloud brocade territory. Zhuowen's eyes flashed as he silently sank into cultivation. After midnight, Zhuowen abruptly opened his eyes. This was because he felt a sudden weight on his back. It was as if there was something hanging on his back. A cold and sinister aura appeared on his neck. It was as if there was something blowing on his neck. At this moment, Zhuowen discovered that the light from the formation disk before him was much dimmer than before. The range of the light only reached Zhuowen's chest. As for his head, it was at the edge of the darkness. Kikik, a strange laughter sounded from behind Zhuowen. Zhuowen's expression darkened. He knew that the thing on his back was most likely the evil spirit that had taken advantage of his weakness. In the instant that Zhuowen slowly turned his head, he saw the face of a woman who had suffered a crushing defeat. Her hair was disheveled, and her crimson eyes were staring coldly at Zhuowen. She licked her lips and cackled. Zhuowen discovered that this woman's tongue was even longer than a snake's tongue. Bang! Zhuowen didn't hesitate to unleash a palm strike, which landed on the woman's face. The woman's head instantly exploded, but there wasn't any blood. Moreover, Zhuowen's right hand felt as if it had struck thin air. It was as light as a feather. But soon, Zhuowen saw the strange woman's face on the other side of the light source. In addition, Zhuowen sensed that there were a few other evil spirits in the tree hole. Outside the tree hole, there was an even greater number of evil spirits. Zhuowen raised the disc array in his hand, and the light source immediately enveloped his head. The evil spirits that were originally gathering towards his head all screamed and ran away in fright. However, Zhuowen soon discovered that his feet, which were not within the range of the light source, were tightly grabbed by a few pairs of pale hands. Damn it! What the hell are these evil spirits? Zhuowen's face turned ugly. He could feel that these evil spirits were not real creatures, but more like ghosts. However, Zhuowen discovered that this evil spirit was even more bizarre than a ghost. This was because his shattered godly power was enough to destroy any ghost or divine soul, but it had no effect on evil spirits. Zhuowen began to believe Lu Miaozhen's words. Even if it was a shattering heaven-tier elite, if he went out alone in the night, the danger was also extremely great. Zhuowen used his shattered godly power to disperse the arms grabbing his feet, but his expression was not too good. Shattered godly power did not have much effect on these evil spirits. Even if he used his shattered godly power to disperse the evil spirits, he could not injure them at all, let alone destroy them. Seeing the light source of the disc array gradually weaken, Zhuowen knew that if he did not think of a way, he really might not be able to survive this night. Time gradually passed, and the light source became weaker and weaker. The range that could be illuminated also shrunk again and again, and the evil spirits in the darkness scrambled to pounce on Zhuowen. Zhuowen continuously used his shattered godly power to disperse the entanglement of the evil spirits, and the shattered godly power in his body was consumed extremely quickly. Damn it! If this continues, I'll really die here. Cold sweat dripped down Zhuowen's forehead. The evil spirits were really too bizarre, making it impossible for him to guard against them. If he still could not think of a solution, it was really possible that he would be killed by these evil spirits. Moreover, in this deep mountain forest, he could not find any other light source that could improve the disc array, which made Zhuowen extremely bitter. However, Zhuowen did not give up because of this. He walked out of the cave in large strides and jumped to the top of the tallest tree. Although the night of the 100 Regions' outer realm was terrifyingly dark, Zhuowen knew that as long as there was a light source nearby, then he would be able to see. Very quickly, Zhuowen discovered that there was a weak light source near a bush about a few kilometers away from him. Zhuowen revealed a joyful expression. He knew that he was saved. He rushed down from the top of the tree and rushed in the direction of the light source. I hope the disc array can still hold on for a while. Zhuowen looked at the disc array in his hand. The range of the light source of this disc array was already only able to illuminate half of his body, and it was still continuously weakening. Zhuowen knew that the reason why the surrounding evil spirits did not completely attack him was mainly because they were afraid of the light source on his body. If even the light source disappeared, he would fall into endless darkness and become a living target for many evil spirits. That would be the most dangerous thing. Very quickly, Zhuowen approached the light source, which was only about 500 meters away. The light source in his hand was already so weak that it was only the size of a palm. Other than Zhuowen's hands, the rest of his body had fallen into darkness. In the terrifying darkness, Zhuowen could only see the light source in front of him and the light source in his hand, and his ears were noisy and sharp evil spirits. In order to resist the evil spirits, Zhuowen released his divine soul sword in tent, which surrounded his body, and barely blocked the evil spirits' attacks. Zhuowen could feel that the strength of these evil spirits was very ordinary, but because they were in the darkness and did not have a physical body, they caused great trouble for Zhuowen. Zhuowen sighed softly. He knew very well that if his eyes and spiritual sense could see the darkness of the 100 territories of the outer realms, and if he could see these evil spirits, then even if there was no light source, he would be able to dodge their attacks and stay far away. Unfortunately, He did not have this ability at all. The moment the light source in Zhuowen's hand was completely extinguished, Zhuowen smoothly entered the range of the light source near the bushes. Only then did Zhuowen discover that the center of the light source was an irregular stone that was half the height of a person. The light source was emitted from this stone. Around the stone, there were 3 figures sitting cross-legged. However, the moment Zhuowen suddenly rushed in, the 3 people instantly opened their eyes, took out their weapons, and looked at Zhuowen with unfriendly eyes. Zhuowen noticed that the 3 people were 2 men and 1 woman. One of the younger men was very handsome, carrying a long sword on his back, and had an outstanding temperament. The other middle-aged man was burly, holding a long hammer in his hand, and his eyes were very fierce. As for the remaining young woman, her looks were ordinary, but Zhuowen could feel that the aura on her body was very unusual. The 3 of you, I am Zhuowen. Because the light source in my hand was about to go out, I happened to see a light source here, so I accidentally broke in. If I have offended you in any way, please forgive me. Chapter 3699. Truly laughable. This fellow Taoist, what does your light source extinguishing have to do with us? Be more sensible and hurry up and scram. The handsome youth with a sword on his back snickered, looking at Zhuowen with a mocking expression. The middle-aged man and that woman also fell silent when they heard the youth speak. Zhuowen could tell that this youth with a sword on his back should be the one in charge among these 3 people. The 3 of you, as long as you let me stay for a night, it'll do. Of course, I won't stay for free. I'll naturally give you all remuneration. Zhuowen said in a solemn voice. Oh, remuneration? What remuneration? The youth with a sword on his back became interested and said coolly. Zhuowen took out a birth-rebirth good fortune pill and threw it to the youth. Half-step heaven-breaching, level divine pill. Although the quality is average, it's still passable. Give me those 100 divine pills of yours, and I'll let you stay for a night. The youth with a sword on his back said indifferently, but Zhuowen's expression became gloomy. The birth-rebirth good fortune pill was at any rate a half-step heaven-breaching level divine pill. Even a fetal divine transformation powerhouse might not be able to casually take out 100 of this level of earth god pills either. Furthermore, the birth-rebirth good fortune pill reserves on him did not have that many either. Of course, if you can't take out those 100 divine pills, hand your spirit ring to me, and I can also barely let you stay for a night, the youth with a sword on his back said, reaching for a yard after taking an inch. Zhuowen's expression was calm as he said, coolly, what if I say no? The youth with a sword on his back was stunned, looking at the Zhuowen in front of him in surprise. The instant Zhuowen appeared within the range of the light source, he saw through that Zhuowen's cultivation was merely 5th blight, while he was late-stage fetal divine transformation, and his 2 subordinates were initial-stage fetal divine transformation powerhouses. With their lineup, Zhuowen was an ant-like existence in his eyes. He should only be at their mercy. It was just that he did not expect that this ant was actually so unyielding. Hoo-hoo, this is not up to you to say no. Now that you've stepped into my territory, your life is in my hands, and your things can only belong to me. The young man laughed. The young woman and the middle-aged man suddenly blocked Zhuowen's path of retreat. Powerful auras surged, firmly locking onto Zhuowen. You want to kill me? Zhuowen's gaze turned sharp. Hee, you're not that stupid after all. I'll give you one more chance. Hand over the spirit ring and get the hell out of here. This is your only choice. The young man sneered. Puchi. With a flash of sword light, the heads of the middle-aged man and the young woman exploded, scattering into a fine mist of blood as they fell to the ground. The smile on the young man's face completely froze. He looked at Zhuowen in disbelief, who was surrounded by the sword essence of the spirit. This fifth blight and had actually instantly killed 2 of his fetal god transformation subordinates. How was this possible? You hid your cultivation? The young man's face was gloomy as he involuntarily retreated. Zhuowen walked step by step towards the young man and said in a calm voice, "Answer me, did you want to kill me just now?" "No. Fellow Taoist, I didn't mean that. How about this? I'll allow you to stay in the light source. Also, I'll return this spirit pill to you." The young man took a few steps back, his face full of fear, and threw the rebirth pill to Zhuowen. Zhuowen did not even look at the rebirth pill. He coldly looked at the young man, the killing intent in his eyes almost undisguised. The young man retreated to the edge of the light source and said, "Fellow Taoist, I'm from the Yunjin Lord's mansion. If you dare to kill me, you'll also be in great trouble." Zhuowen smiled and asked, "What a coincidence. Before I met you, I also met 2 people from the Yunjin Lord's mansion. I remember they were called Zhou Xianwen and Yu Fu. What's your relationship with them?" The young man's eyes lit up, and he said, "My name is Eugene. I'm Yu Fu's cousin. It seems that fellow Taoist knows my cousin, so we're on the same side." Zhuowen still walked towards Eugene and grinned. "Zhou Xianwen and Yu Fu were both killed by me." "What?" Eugene's pupils shrank, and his mind was in chaos. He was so scared that he could not help but take another step back and step into the darkness. Instantly, countless evil spirits grabbed Eugene, and the screams in the surroundings became even more rapid and frequent. Zhuowen silently stood in the light source. With Eugene's strength, it was not difficult for him to get rid of those ordinary evil spirits. After Eugene re-entered the light source, Zhuowen made his move. But soon, a chill rose in Zhuowen's heart. He actually felt an extremely terrifying aura in the darkness. This aura actually made him tremble. Then, he heard Eugene's miserable scream. Along with this scream was the sound of flesh being torn apart. Not long after, Eugene's screams completely disappeared, but that terrifying aura did not dissipate for a long time. Moreover, Zhuowen could feel that the owner of this aura was staring at him with greed in its eyes. Although Zhuowen could not see what was in the darkness, his sharp intuition told him that the owner of this aura was extremely terrifying. It was not something that Zhuowen could resist. Zhuowen's eyes revealed a dignified expression. He knew that Eugene was dead, and the owner of this aura was definitely not an ordinary evil spirit. It was actually able to easily kill a late-stage divine transformation realm cultivator, like Eugene. Pung! Suddenly, there was the sound of air being torn apart. Then, from the darkness, a claw reached out and grabbed at Zhuowen's chest. This hand claw was extremely fast and suddenly rushed into the range of the light source. How is this possible? Zhuowen's pupils shrank. The moment the claw reached him, he moved away from his fatal spot. The claw tore through his left shoulder, causing blood to spurt out. See. Zhuowen could clearly see that the claw was rapidly melting under the light source. The claw immediately retracted back into the darkness. Zhuowen quickly sat down on a rock. This was the core of the light source, and the light source was the strongest. Zhuowen didn't believe that the strange thing could reach its claws into the stone. Pung, pung, pung. In the darkness, there was the sound of footsteps like an earthquake. These footsteps circled around the light source, one step at a time, clearly restless. Finally, the footsteps gradually faded away. It was clear that the owner had given up on capturing Zhuowen. Zhuowen let out a light breath, but his expression became more and more dignified. He did not expect that such a terrifying evil spirit would exist in the ash cloud forest. Recalling the scene before his light source was extinguished and he was still wandering in the ash cloud forest, Zhuowen could not help but feel a chill in his heart. Fortunately, he did not encounter such a terrifying evil spirit at that time. Otherwise, he doubted whether he would be able to escape with his life. Zhuowen sat cross-legged on the rock for an entire night, not daring to leave the rock at all. At the break of dawn, Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes. The injury on his left shoulder had somewhat recovered. The evil spirit's attack was not simple. It contained a strange power, and this power was constantly destroying his meridians. Fortunately, his injury was not serious, so after a night of rest, his injury was under control. Zhuowen put away the rock again. After dealing with the middle-aged man and the young woman's bodies, he found a pool of blood not far away. Zhuowen knew that this should be left behind by Eugene. However, he did not see Eugene's body. He probably died without a complete corpse. I have to leave the ash cloud forest as soon as possible. Chapter 3700. There were several huge statues erected in this village. Zhuowen knew that these statues were the light source, the village guarding treasure that dispelled evil spirits. This should be the Green Elephant Village that Yuanda mentioned before. This village has a transmission array that leads directly to the Yunjin region. Zhuowen's spirit was roused as he stepped into this village. Green Elephant Village was mostly mortals. There were also some cultivators, but their cultivation was not too high. However, he knew that this Green Elephant Village's village chief was a divine fetus transformation powerhouse, the highest manager of Green Elephant Village. Zhuowen asked the villagers and soon arrived at the Green Elephant Village's transmission array. But what made Zhuowen helpless was that this Green Elephant Village's transmission array actually required myriad world stones. How could he have so many world stones on him? Instead, he had quite a number of chaos crystals. Can I use this as a replacement? Zhuowen took out the chaos crystal and gave it to the transmission array's guard. He wanted to test whether this chaos crystal could be used for a transaction. The guard's pupils constricted. He took the chaos crystal, looked left and right, and said coolly, "This is the first time I've seen this thing. I also don't know if it can replace world stones. How about this? I'll take it and ask the village chief. You wait here for me." Zhuowen took the chaos crystal back and said coolly, "Since you don't know, then forget it." Zhuowen observed that the instant he took out the chaos crystal, this guard's expression changed. He knew that this guard actually recognized this chaos crystal. But this guard pretended not to know. There was something fishy about this, so Zhuowen simply took it back. "Sai, why are you like this? I'm helping you out of kindness, and you don't appreciate it?" The guard's expression changed slightly. His tone immediately became impolite. Zhuowen could not be bothered with the guard and directly left the transmission array. He had quite a number of divine pills on him. Moreover, he also had brilliant medical skills. Earning money was not a big problem to him. At most, he would stay in Green Elephant Village for a period of time, earn enough world stones, and then transmit again. Seeing Zhuowen simply leave, the guard's expression immediately became gloomy. He coldly snorted and instructed his companions before leaving the teleportation array. He had to report this matter to the village chief. After Zhuowen circled around the Green Elephant Village, he discovered that a caravan was currently recruiting guards. Coincidentally, this caravan was heading to Yunjin Hill. The person in charge of recruiting guards was a burly man with a stocky build. At this moment, the burly man waved his hand at the people surrounding him and said, "Our caravan is full. Please go back." Everyone was dissatisfied because the rewards given by the caravan were very generous, so they were not willing to lose. You don't have to be dissatisfied. If you are confident in yourselves, you can challenge the people I have chosen. If you can defeat the guards I have chosen, you can replace them. The brawny man said indifferently. Everyone was overjoyed. They rubbed their shoulders and went up to challenge him one by one. There were a total of 18 guards chosen by the burly man. None of them were weak. They were all around the third or fourth blight. Those who weren't chosen went up to challenge them one by one. Unfortunately, they were no match for these guards and were defeated one by one. Now, you know my Lin Hu's vision, right? You guys didn't get chosen by me because my vision is good. Your strengths are indeed very poor. The brawny man said with a cold smile. Everyone was ashamed and did not dare to refute. I'll try. Suddenly, an indifferent voice came from the crowd. Following that, the crowd involuntarily parted. Zhuowen slowly walked out. The moment Lin Hu saw Zhuowen, his eyes revealed a brilliant light. Good, you're very good. I'll take you in. Lin Hu laughed loudly and said. Zhuowen nodded and came to the guard team. Everyone was dumbfounded. Didn't he say that he was not recruiting people? Why was he recruiting people so readily now? You all don't have to be unwilling. This fellow Taoist has peak 5th blight cultivation. If you guys are unhappy, feel free to challenge him. I don't object anyway. Lin Hu said with a cold grin. Everyone no longer dared to speak. They were very clear that peak 5th blight cultivators were already the strongest powerhouses below heaven breaking. How could such a powerhouse be willing to be a caravan's guard? Fellow Taoist, I'm called Lin Hu. I'm the guard captain of the Clear Heart Association's business department. I wonder how I should address you, fellow Taoist. After everyone dispersed, Lin Hu approached Zhuowen as if he was familiar with him. Lin Hu's own cultivation was also peak 5th blight. The two people's cultivation were similar. Lin Hu naturally paid more attention to Zhuowen. As for the other newly recruited guards, they looked at Zhuowen rather enviously. They could tell that Zhuowen's cultivation was higher than theirs. This meant that Zhuowen had gained Lin Hu's attention. This one is Zhuowen. The caravan's guards this time will all be relying on Brother Lin. Zhuowen said indifferently. Lin Hu waved his hand and said modest words. But he was rather polite to Zhuowen. Brother Zhuowen, I'll bring you to see Miss Fan Shuang now. She's the daughter of our Clear Heart Association's business department head. The guards we're recruiting this time are mainly to protect Miss Fan Shuang. As he said, Lin Hu brought Zhuowen as well as a group of guards to the side of a luxurious carriage. Beside the carriage was a middle-aged man wearing a cyan robe leaning against it. Zhuowen gave this middle-aged man another glance, because he discovered that this middle-aged man was actually a late-stage embryonic god transformation powerhouse that was not weaker than Eugene. Manager Chun. This subordinate has already chosen the guards. Also, this brother is called Zhuowen. He's also peak 5th blight cultivation. He's a rare talent. This subordinate hopes to let him meet Miss Fan Shuang. Lin Hu said. Chun Liang glanced at Zhuowen indifferently and said, just peak 5th blight. What kind of talent is that? Miss Fan Shuang isn't to the point of showing her face in public for this matter. Lin Hu, you better pay attention in the future. Don't randomly find a nobody and think that he's a talent. Of course, with your cultivation, what eyesight do you have to find a talent? Go back. Lin Hu's expression stiffened, but he did not dare to flare up. He hurriedly cupped his hands in acknowledgement and gave Zhuowen an apologetic expression. Zhuowen gave a carefree smile, indicating that it was fine. He was only following the caravan because it was on the way to Yunjin Feudal Lord City. He never planned on joining this so-called Clear Heart Association. Just as Lin Hu brought Zhuowen and the rest of the guards away, a group of armored guards rushed over and surrounded everyone. Green Elephant Village's guards. When Lin Hu saw these guards surround them, his expression changed slightly. On the other hand, Zhuowen's eyes narrowed slightly while his expression turned cold. He had faintly guessed something. Chapter 3701. The old man in front of the green elephant village guards was the village chief, Nan Qingxiang. Zhuowen could see that Nan Qingxiang's cultivation was inferior to Chen Liang's and was only at the early stage of the embryonic divine transformation realm. However, he could see that Nan Qingxiang had a calm expression and didn't fear Chen Liang at all. "Manager Chen, I'm really sorry. I'm here to take away a prisoner," Nan Qingxiang said with a smile. Chen Liang raised his eyebrows and said, "Prisoner? Who is it?" A man walked out from behind Nan Qingxiang and looked at Zhuowen. He pointed at Zhuowen and said, "It's this person." He wanted to use the green elephant village's teleportation array, but because he didn't have enough realm stones, he actually attacked us and seriously injured a few of my friends. Zhuowen's gaze turned gloomy. The man who came out was the guard of the teleportation array from before. At this moment, the guard was actually calling a deer a horse and slandering him. Zhuowen saw the calm expression on Nan Qingxiang's face and quickly realized that Nan Qingxiang had done this on purpose. However, Zhuowen couldn't understand. Nan Qingxiang didn't hesitate to slander him. Was it just for the chaos crystals on him? In fact, what Zhuowen didn't know was that there weren't many chaos crystals in the outer regions, especially when the one Zhuowen took out was a mid-grade chaos crystal. The guard just happened to recognize the chaos crystal. Nan Qingxiang, an early-stage embryonic divine transformation realm cultivator, had never seen such a grade of chaos crystal before. Therefore, when he heard the guard report that Zhuowen was only a fifth blight cultivator, he immediately became greedy and wanted to keep Zhuowen. Lin, who looked at Zhuowen in shock. He opened his mouth, but didn't say anything in the end. But he was clear in his heart that Zhuowen seemed to be doomed. Nan Qingxiang was an embryonic divine transformation realm cultivator after all, and Zhuowen was just a newly recruited guard. Chen Liang wouldn't protect him. Chen Liang cast a sidelong glance at Zhuowen and said indifferently, "Since this person has committed treason and injured your guard, then please leave." As he spoke, Chen Liang waved his sleeve and returned to the side of the carriage with his eyes closed. However, Lin, who did not look at Zhuowen. Instead, he led the rest of the guards and gathered beside the carriage. In an instant, only Zhuowen was left facing Southern Green Elephant, and the guards all by himself. Her, little bastard, you really have guts to actually dare injure my Green Elephant Village's people. I think you're tired of living. Take him down. Nan Qingxiang grinned. The guards behind him immediately surrounded Zhuowen. Wait! Just as Zhuowen was about to explode, a clear and melodious voice sounded from within the carriage. Everyone looked in the direction of the voice and saw a jade-white arm stretch out from the carriage and lift the curtain. A young woman with a graceful figure walked out. This woman was extremely beautiful. Her lips were red, her teeth were white, and she had long, silky hair. "Miss Fan Shuang, why have you come out?" Chen Liang opened his eyes. When he saw the woman, he was surprised. Fan Shuang looked at Chen Liang and said seriously, "Housekeeper Chen, although this person was recruited at the last minute, as long as he is a guard, he is a member of the Clear Heart Guild's business department. The business department will not simply abandon our members. Housekeeper Chen, I hope that you will remember what I have said in the future." Chen Liang frowned, and his face darkened. However, he did not refute her. Fan Shuang walked towards Nan Qingxiang and said, "Village Chief Nan, this person is my guard. He hit your guard, so he was indeed in the wrong first. However, I will compensate you for this." As she spoke, Fan Shuang threw a spiritual ring to Nan Qingxiang. "There are 30,000 world stones in this spiritual ring. I think that should be enough to compensate for your loss." Fan Shuang said flatly. Nan Qingxiang took the spiritual ring and frowned. However, he smiled and said, "Miss Fan Shuang, I don't care about compensation. I only want the person. After all, this person injured my guard for no reason. I will not forgive him. Fan Shuang's face darkened, and she said, Village Chief Nan, do you mean that you are going to go against the Clear Heart Guild? Nan Qingxiang's face changed. He did not expect Fan Shuang to raise the issue to the Clear Heart Guild. How could his Green Elephant Village be compared to the Clear Heart Guild? The Clear Heart Guild was the second most powerful force in Yunjin City. Nan Qingxiang forced a smile and said, Miss Fan Shuang, please don't misunderstand. I was being impulsive just now. Since Miss Fan Shuang has stepped in, I will show you some respect. As he spoke, Nan Qingxiang glanced coldly at Zhuowen and said, Little bastard, consider yourself lucky that Miss Fan Shuang stood up for you. I will let you off this time. Zhuowen's eyes turned colder, and he said, You are the lucky one. Miss Fan Shuang saved your life. As he spoke, Zhuowen ignored Nan Qingxiang and returned to the carriage. Fan Shuang took another look at Zhuowen. She realized that although the young man's cultivation was not high, he was quite bold. What is your name? Fan Shuang asked with a smile. My name is Zhuowen. Thank you for speaking up for me just now, Miss Fan Shuang, Zhuowen said in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. Fan Shuang nodded and turned to Chen Liang. Manager Chen, let's set off tomorrow morning. As she spoke, Fan Shuang entered the carriage again. Lin Hu and his guards rested at the side. However, they deliberately kept a distance from Zhuowen. After all, Zhuowen had offended Nan Qingxiang, a divine transformation realm expert. They did not want to get too close to him. As night fell, the entire land was plunged into darkness. There were several huge statues standing in the Green Elephant Village that emitted a bright light, protecting the Green Elephant Village from being invaded by the evil spirits outside the village. In the middle of the night, a figure quietly flew out from a tent near the carriage. Nan Qingxiang, you are courting death. Don't blame me for making a move on you. Under the faint light, Zhuowen's eyes were cold and piercingly cold. Today, he had been wronged by Nan Qingxiang for no reason. Nan Qingxiang even wanted to take him away. If he was not strong enough and was taken away, he would not have survived. He, Zhuowen, would never take the initiative to provoke others. However, if others wanted to provoke him, Zhuowen would not tolerate it. He would definitely retaliate with thunderous measures. Zhuowen rushed towards the village chief mansion of the Green Elephant Village. His face also completely changed into an extremely thin and weak middle-aged man during the process of flying. Nan Qingxiang's mansion was heavily guarded. However, with Zhuowen's movement technique, it was easy for him to sneak into the mansion. Zhuowen captured a guard alive. After asking for Nan Qingxiang's room, he continued to go deeper. At this moment, Nan Qingxiang's room was brightly lit. Nan Qingxiang frowned slightly as he stood in the middle of the hall. In front of him, the guard who had slandered Zhuowen was kneeling. My lord, what should we do now? Fan Shuang from the Clear Heart Society is protecting that brat. We don't have a chance to do anything. The guard said. Nan Qingxiang frowned slightly and said helplessly, I didn't expect Miss Fan Shuang to protect a guard who was just recruited. However, we still have a chance. This time, the goods that Fan Shuang and the rest brought are said to be fluorite raw materials. Moreover, there are quite a lot of them. The Yunjin Lord's mansion already knows about this. Moreover, Chunliang is our spy. When the Yunjin Lord's mansion sends people over, we will coordinate with them from the inside. Naturally, we will be able to take down Fan Shuang and the rest. When that time comes, I will capture that little bastard alive. Chapter 3702. Outside the house, Zhuowen listened to Nan Qingxiang's words in silence, his eyes gradually narrowing. It seemed that the journey to Yunjin Hill was not going to be a peaceful one. Zhuowen stopped concealing himself and strode toward Nan Qingxiang's room. In front of the door, 2 guards noticed Zhuowen. They pulled out the large sabers at their waists and stopped Zhuowen. Zhuowen walked forward step by step and waved his hand. The 2 guards' heads exploded, and they died. Bang! Zhuowen kicked open the door and entered the brightly lit room. At this moment, not far from the gate, the guard who had slandered Zhuowen was nodding and bowing and was still saying flattering words. Zhuowen casually sent out a stream of energy, and the guard exploded before he could even let out a scream. Nan Qingxiang stared coldly at the man who suddenly appeared in front of him and said in a low voice, "Who are you? How dare you break into my mansion?" Zhuowen did not waste time talking to Nan Qingxiang. He took a step forward, and purple snow immediately fell around him. Zhuowen's figure flickered like a ghost. Nan Qingxiang was furious. He took a step forward, and the entire mansion shook, as if there was an earthquake. Then Nan Qingxiang threw a punch at Zhuowen. Terrifying energies intertwined and formed a huge shadow of a giant elephant. The giant elephant let out an earth-shattering roar and charged toward Zhuowen. Zhuowen dodged the giant elephant's charge like a ghost and arrived in front of Nan Qingxiang in an instant. He put his palms together and slashed at Nan Qingxiang like a saber. Humming floating saber. The purple saber shadow floated out and chopped at Nan Qingxiang's head. Nan Qingxiang raised his hands and tried to block the attack. But soon, he revealed an expression of terror. His hands were directly chopped off. And then the purple blade suddenly stood on his chest, splitting him in 2. Puff! Nan Qingxiang spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was extremely pale, and his upper body fell to the ground, twitching. Who are you? Why do you want to kill me?" Nan Qingxiang knew that he was going to die today. He glared at Zhuowen. Even if he was going to die, he wanted to know why. "You should have died when you ambushed me today, but because of Miss Fan Shuang's intervention, you didn't die immediately. As I said, you were lucky then." Zhuowen said calmly. Nan Qingxiang's eyes were wide as saucers. He looked at Zhuowen in disbelief and said, It's you? How could this be? You're clearly only at the 5th blight." Zhuowen's lips curled into a mocking smile. His face wriggled and returned to its original appearance. Nan Qingxiang looked at Zhuowen's face and smiled sadly. His eyes were filled with regret. He really didn't think that the guy he didn't put in his eyes was actually so strong. No wonder you have mid-grade chaos gems. So you were hiding your cultivation level. I hate it. I hate myself for being greedy, Nan Qingxiang yelled unwillingly. Unfortunately, Zhuowen's sword finger had already landed on his glabella, completely destroying his spirit. "The moment you offended me, you were destined to die." Zhuowen's expression was cold. He didn't look at Nan Qingxiang anymore. Instead, he left the mansion. Not long after Zhuowen left, Nan Qingxiang's mansion was in chaos. When the guards realized that Nan Qingxiang was dead, they were all in a mess. When Zhuowen returned to the tent, he bumped into Fan Shuang, who had just come out of the carriage. At that moment, Fan Shuang sized up Zhuowen and asked, "Where did you go just now?" "I couldn't sleep, so I went out for a stroll," Zhuowen said with a smile. Fan Shuang looked deeply at Zhuowen and nodded. She told him to rest early and return to the carriage. What a powerful woman! Zhuowen smiled and returned to the tent. The next day, Chen Liang summoned a divine boat from his spiritual ring and ordered Lin, who to arrange for the goods to be stored in the divine boat. When everything was ready, Fan Shuang walked out of the carriage and entered the divine boat under Chen Liang's instructions. What's going on in Green Elephant Village? Why are there white slips everywhere? Fan Shuang stood on the deck and saw that every house in Green Elephant Village had white slips hanging on them. She had a strange look on her face. Chun Liang stood beside Fan Shuang and was also confused. Lin Hu, go and find out what's going on. Chun Liang ordered. Lin Hu accepted the order and left. Not long after, he returned in a fluster. Miss Fan Shuang, Master Chun, bad news. The village chief of Green Elephant Village, Nan Qingxiang, was killed last night. Today, the entire Green Elephant Village is hanging white slips to pay tribute to Nan Qingxiang. Lin Hu said in a panic. What? Chun Liang was shocked. Fan Shuang's eyes narrowed. However, she was experienced in business and quickly calmed down. At the same time, she couldn't help but look at Zhuowen on the other side of the deck. She recalled Zhuowen's suspicious behavior last night. Could it be that Zhuowen didn't go for a walk last night, but went to Nan Qingxiang's residence to kill Nan Qingxiang? However, Fan Shuang quickly dismissed the idea. She felt that it was ridiculous. After all, Nan Qingxiang was a divine transformation realm elite. Even if Chun Liang wanted to kill Nan Qingxiang secretly, it wouldn't be that easy. Zhuowen was only at the 5th blight. How could he be a match for Nan Qingxiang? It was even more impossible for him to have the power to kill Nan Qingxiang. Let's leave Green Elephant Village immediately. There might be a powerful assassin here. Fan Shuang ordered everyone to get on the boat and let Chun Liang drive the divine boat away from Green Elephant Village. Zhuowen stood silently at the corner of the deck. He noticed that Chun Liang's expression wasn't good. Zhuowen's lips curled into a mocking smile. He had heard what Nan Qingxiang said last night and knew that Chun Liang was a spy in Yunjin Lord's residence. However, Zhuowen didn't intend to meddle in other people's business. It was fine as long as the divine boat could safely reach Yunjin City. If Chun Liang got in his way, Zhuowen didn't mind teaching Chun Liang a lesson. The divine boat wasn't fast. Zhuowen understood from Lin Hu that it would take 10 days to reach Yunjin City from Green Elephant Village. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. During these 3 days, the caravan traveled during the day and looked for a place to set up camp at night. Nothing happened during this period. However, Fan Shuang often looked for Zhuowen during these 3 days. Every time they chatted, she was trying to sound him out. Zhuowen knew that Fan Shuang was suspicious of his whereabouts that night. However, Zhuowen insisted that he was just taking a walk that night, and Fan Shuang couldn't do anything about it. As for Fan Shuang, she had been constantly looking for Zhuowen for the past 3 days. Thus, there were quite a few rumors circulating among the guards. They secretly thought that Fan Shuang might have taken a liking to Zhuowen. Even Chun Liang looked at Zhuowen strangely because of the rumors. Chapter 3703. Night fell, and the divine ship stopped in a wasteland. On the deck of the divine ship stood a rather large stone statue, emitting a bright light that enveloped the entire divine ship. At night, the evil spirits let out continuous howls, eerie and strange. Everyone on the divine ship had long been accustomed to it, and did not feel that anything was wrong. Zhuowen sat cross-legged in a room in the cabin. The room was not big, about 10 square meters or so. The decorations inside were also very simple, with a small bed and a wooden table. Other than that, there was nothing else. On the wooden table, there was a stone half the size of a palm that emitted a weak light. Zhuowen held a blood-colored spike that was about an inch in size in his hand. This was the astral weapon fragment he had obtained from Yufu, the blood spike. Zhuowen repeatedly observed this blood spike and found that there was nothing special about this blood spike other than its material being different from a heaven-breaking divine artifact. Let's take a look with my divine sense. Zhuowen's eyes flickered as he derived his divine sense, intending to explore the blood spike. The moment Zhuowen's divine sense entered the blood spike, he immediately felt a strong smell of blood. Then he saw a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. Countless corpses were piled up into a mountain, and the sky was raining blood. Suddenly, the blood clouds in the sky kept rolling. Zhuowen saw a pair of incomparably scarlet eyes in the depths of the blood clouds, coldly looking down at Zhuowen. Lowly person, do you want to obtain incomparably powerful strength? If you do, then offer your soul to me, and then collect enough souls for me. As long as you can complete the task I give you and feed me, I will bestow you with supreme power. Zhuowen looked indifferently at this pair of eyes. He vaguely guessed that this thing might be the artifact spirit of this blood spike. Moreover, this artifact spirit's intelligence was very high, and it actually called itself I. However, what Zhuowen did not expect was that in order to control this blood spike, he actually had to offer his soul. Didn't this mean that he had to become the slave of this astral weapon before he could use it? You've got your priorities mixed up. This was no longer a case of a man commanding an army, but an army commanding a man. Are you talking about the blood sacrifice? Zhuowen asked indifferently. He. You're very smart. That's right. I need 3 stages of blood sacrifice. The first stage requires 10,000 souls, and we've only gathered 4,000 souls. We're still short of 6,000. If you sacrifice nearly 6,000 people for me, I will grant you the supreme power. The cold voice came from the bloody cloud again, shaking the entire bloody world. Zhuowen sneered, feeling even more disgusted with these astral soldiers. Even if he knew that this was a world where the strong were respected, where the weak were prey to the strong, and that the lives of mortals were cheap. However, he really couldn't bring himself to kill those weak mortals for no reason. Even if he obtained a star weapon, he would not do so because this was a matter of principle. I'm sorry, but you're just a weapon. Since I've obtained you, you have to respect me as your master. Your power is mine. Zhuowen said indifferently. The eyes in the bloody cloud suddenly widened. After a moment of silence, it suddenly let out a loud laughter that shook the entire world. Lowly human, are you making me laugh? I'm the astral weapon spirit from the immemorial star system. You're just a lowly human. You were born to be my slave, and now you dare to ask me to respect you as my master? You're courting death. As it spoke, the bloody cloud suddenly tumbled. Soon after, the bloody cloud began to sink crazily, forming a bloody mouth. This bloody mouth was so big that it seemed to be able to swallow the entire earth. Zhuowen's expression changed slightly. He felt an unprecedented and terrifying pressure crushing his body. The powerful pressure seemed to crush him, making him unable to move. He could only tremble slightly and stare stiffly at the bloody mouth that was getting closer and closer. Zhuowen's heart sank. He had been too careless and underestimated the blood thorn weapon spirit. In this weapon spirit world, it was indeed inappropriate for his spiritual soul to enter without permission. Fortunately, Zhuowen had only sent a part of his spiritual soul here. However, even if this part of his spiritual soul was destroyed, it would still cause a lot of damage to Zhuowen. When Zhuowen watched the bloody mouth swallow him, he suddenly felt strange energy. A strange purple light erupted from his body. Soon after, a mysterious purple mark appeared between his eyebrows. The purple mark spun rapidly and then turned into an ordinary stone. The moment Zhuowen saw the stone, his pupils involuntarily shrank. He was very familiar with this stone. It was the Tai word stone of the immemorial primordial stone. After the stone had fused with his soul, it had never appeared again. As soon as the Tai word stone appeared, a blazing purple light instantly filled the entire world. The originally blood-red world was completely replaced by purple. As for the bloody mouth formed by the blood cloud, it collapsed under the purple light. What kind of power is this? This power, could it be the immemorial primordial stone? No, how could a lowly human like you have such a thing? The blood cloud dispersed with a loud rumble and instantly fled into the distance. The voice that came from it was filled with terror and fear. The Tai word stone seemed to have a mind of its own. With a whoosh, it escaped and caught up with the bloody cloud. Zhuo, when only heard the blood-curdling screeches from the blood cloud before he discovered that the blood cloud had been completely absorbed by the high symbol stone. There was no longer any trace left behind. In the dark room, Zhuo suddenly opened his eyes. His forehead was dripping with cold sweat. The scene just now was too thrilling. If not for the Tai word stone's sudden power, that part of his spiritual soul would have been destroyed. The Tai word stone? Zhuo suddenly noticed a stone emitting purple light floating in front of him. It was the Tai word stone he saw in the blood-thorn weapon spirit world. What shocked Zhuo even more was that the Tai word stone was attached to the bloody thorn and was actually devouring it. Zhuo could faintly hear the blood-curdling screams coming from within the blood thorn. Soon, he discovered that the blood thorn had completely disintegrated into powder, while the high symbol stone had fallen into Zhuo Wen's right palm. Zhuo Wen felt a heart-wrenching pain coming from his palm. However, this pain came and went quickly. When he looked again, Zhuo Wen discovered that a purple mark had appeared on his palm. This mark was exactly the same as the bloody thorn, only the color was different. After the Tai word stone left this mark, it turned into a purple light and returned to the depths of Zhuo Wen's forehead. This Zhuo Wen stared blankly at the blood thorn mark on his palm. With a thought, the mark emitted a purple light, and a broken thorn floated in his palm. Chapter 3704. What is the origin of the immemorial primordial stone? It can even devour the astral weapon that was left behind from the immemorial star system. It can even replicate the astral weapon's power on its host. Zhuo took a deep breath and regained his composure. If the immemorial primordial stone could devour the astral weapon, its origin must be much greater than what Zhuo had guessed. From now on, this mark shall be called the purple thorn. Zhuo looked at the purple mark on his palm and was in a good mood. The purple thorn originated from the astral weapon, the blood thorn. Although it was broken, it still possessed great power. Zhuo had a feeling that if he could find the other astral weapon fragments, he would be able to obtain more of the astral weapon's power with the help of the Tai word stone. Rumble! Suddenly, the divine ship shook violently. Zhuo frowned and stood up. He opened the cabin door and went to the deck. On the deck, many guards rushed to the edge of the divine ship and set up cannons. Zhuo then realized that it was already morning outside. Just as the divine ship rose into the sky, 3 divine ships appeared in front of them and blocked their path. The 3 divine ships in front of them shot out energy cannons and landed densely on the divine ship that they were on. Although the divine ship had a powerful energy shield, it couldn't withstand the attacks of the energy cannons. Many ripples appeared on the energy shield. The entire divine ship was shaking violently, like a small boat in the middle of the ocean. Miss Fan Shuang, what is going on? Zhuo asked Fan Shuang, who was commanding the battle at the edge of the deck. They are from the Yunjin Lord Mansion. Our whereabouts have been exposed. Fan Shuang's beautiful eyes were filled with misery. She could see that the 3 divine ships in front of them were each commanded by a fetal god transformation realm expert. Their merchant group only had Chen Liang, who was at the fetal god transformation realm. They were at a complete disadvantage. If the three divine ships caught up with them, their merchant group would be doomed. At this moment, Chun Liang leaped forward with 3 golden talismans in his right hand. Immediately, the 3 talismans turned into 3 different directions and entered the 3 divine ships. They turned into 3 golden rings of light, binding the 3 divine ships within. Let's go. My golden circle talisman won't last much longer. Chun Liang landed back on the deck and drove the divine ship with all his might. Instantly, it fled in another direction. About a quarter of an hour later, they could no longer see any traces of the 3 divine ships. On the deck, Lin Hu and a large group of guards were so scared that they fell to the ground. Just now, they had faced 3 embryonic divine transformation powerhouses. Each one of them could have easily crushed them. Fortunately, they were out of danger now. We were obviously on a secret mission. How did the Yunjin Lord's mansion find out about our whereabouts? Fan Shuang's face paled as her chest heaved up and down. I'm afraid there must be a spy among us. The divine ships of the Yunjin Lord's mansion came just in time, and they attacked us at the right time. If they didn't know about our whereabouts and departure time in advance, they wouldn't have been so precise. Chun Liang said with a sinister look. As soon as he said that, Lin Hu and the rest were shocked. They looked around and tried to determine who could be the spy. In an instant, everyone scattered like birds startled by the twang of a bow. Fan Shuang's eyes narrowed. She wasn't a fool. The moment the divine ships of the Yunjin Lord's mansion appeared, she knew that there was a spy among them. Miss Fan Shuang, our brothers here are all trustworthy, and we are all familiar with their backgrounds. However, we don't know about this guy. I heard that he is an outsider from Green Elephant Village. Chun Liang suddenly pointed at Zhuowen and said in a deep voice. Everyone's eyes fell on Zhuowen. Lin Hu and the rest looked at him with disdain and hostility. Chun Liang was the only embryonic divine transformation powerhouse in their group. To them, Chun Liang's words had an inexplicable authority. In an instant, everyone distanced themselves from Zhuowen. Their eyes were filled with hostility. Fan Shuang also stared at Zhuowen. She couldn't help but think of the night when Zhuowen had left the group alone in Green Elephant Village. In her eyes, Zhuowen was indeed the most suspicious person. Zhuowen looked at Chun Liang coldly. He had not expected the latter to accuse him of being a thief. However, Zhuowen did not say anything. He knew that it was useless to say anything now. Everyone had already pointed the finger at him. No one would believe his words. Miss Fan Shuang, do you also suspect that I am the spy? Zhuowen stared at Fan Shuang. Fan Shuang's eyes flickered. However, she turned her face away and did not look at Zhuowen. You spy. Are you still trying to deny it? I'll just capture you. Chun Liang grinned. The aura of the embryonic divine transformation realm surged out, and he flew toward Zhuowen. Zhuowen's eyes turned cold. However, the corner of his lips curled up into a mocking smile. This Chun Liang was simply courting death. He actually dared to attack him. Lin Fan would not hold back at all. Manager Chun, stop. Fan Shuang suddenly stood in front of Zhuowen and shouted. Chun Liang stopped in his tracks and said with a sinister look, Miss Fan Shuang, you are still protecting this person at a time like this. Have you been bewitched by him? Fan Shuang did not answer Chun Liang. Instead, she turned around and looked at Zhuowen. Zhuowen, you should leave. You know that you are the most suspicious person. The caravan can no longer tolerate you. Zhuowen looked deeply at Fan Shuang. He smiled faintly and did not say anything. Then, he jumped out of the deity's ship and left the caravan. Miss Fan Shuang, you are letting the tiger return to the mountain. This Zhuowen is really a person who knows his face but not his heart, so He sneaked into our escort team to deliver information to the Yunjin Lord Mansion. What a jerk. That's right. That's right. What an ungrateful guy. Lin Hu and the other escorts snorted at Zhuowen and could not help but scold him. Chun Liang frowned. His gaze towards Fan Shuang turned even colder. This woman always got in his way. If it was not for the fact that he did not want to expose his identity, he would have captured this woman and ravaged her. Fan Shuang, you won't be able to be proud for long. However, it was a pity that the ant had escaped. Humph, Chun Liang thought to himself. The people on the deity ship quickly reorganized themselves. Chun Liang restarted the deity ship and flew towards Yunjin Lord City. About 4 hours later, the 3 deity ships of the Yunjin Lord Mansion suddenly appeared from behind the mountain ridge and intercepted them. What is going on? How did they catch up with us? Lin, Pu, and the other escorts were in a panic and could not believe what they were seeing. The 3 deity ships were obviously lying in ambush. They obviously knew their flight path and had been waiting for them at the mountain ridge. Quick, prepare the cannons to fire. Lin, who shouted at the other escorts. However, just as he finished speaking, he was hit by a blast of energy. He was smashed to the stern of the ship and spat out blood. The escorts were shocked and looked at Chun Liang in disbelief.